relationships. Our clients refer us to their family and friends because of our high attention to detail. Most of our listings sell within 1 week, and Urpino real estate listings consistently rank #1 on Zillow. Call our superstar Lynn Webley. Lynn is one of our top producers, and her clients love her.
Listen to this, an exclusive WCPT preview listing. 3500 West Cullum, a 4-flat with a special price and a great opportunity for investing. This property will be going live on June 13th. Call today.
So whether you're buying, selling, or investing in real estate, visit our website, urpinorealestate.com. That's IRPINO realestate.com, or call or text Lynn at 773-503-2244. That's 773-503-2244.
We've all had that feeling. Your heartbeat quickens, your eyes widen, the sky opens up and showers you in a million heart-shaped raindrops. You're in love with the perfect song. With Spotify, the more you listen, the better we get at helping you discover songs you love. So, whether it's the next breakout star or that song you danced to at prom, we'll help you find it and fall in love all over again. Download the free app today. Love what you love. Free on Spotify.
IT orchestration stories from CDWG. A government agency needed to prepare for the future, but its IT infrastructure was stuck in the past. So CDWG orchestrated a converged infrastructure solution featuring Dell EMC technology. It modernized their data center using the industry's most innovative infrastructure portfolio. Servers and storage by Dell. IT orchestration by CDWG. Learn more at cdwg.com/Dell. CDWG. People who get it.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
Well, it's been quite a week. I think it's the dichotomy of the circumstances that went on this week that really, I think, drew my attention. And first of all, right out of the gate, though, I do want to thank everybody who showed up at the Andersonville Brewing Company in Hamburger Mary's last week. We had a great time. It was so awesome to see everybody come down. I have to be honest, being that it was our first one ever, I was a bit nervous. You know that feeling when you throw a party and you've invited everybody and you've cleaned off your table for the first time in probably 6 months, and you've put out dip, and other foods that you know you won't consume yourself. You've bought far too many patties and links and buns and tortilla chips, and you're just kind of staring at them going, people better show up to this thing because I'm not consuming party snack food for the next month in lieu of real food. And the first hour can be disconcerting. It can be, where people are sort of trickling in and you're not quite sure if you're going to have a decent crowd or if they're just going to kind of all come at the end when all the food's rotten anyways. Like it's just part and parcel to throwing a party at, and maybe outgrow that. I haven't yet. I still to this day, I have this weird feeling nobody's going to show up at my birthday party. It's probably left over from growing up in Peaks Mill. When you live out in the woods, it's a long drive. Anyways, so it was really heartening and wonderful to see everybody come out. And some folks that showed up were super early, and some people came a long distance. And I can't tell you how wonderful it was to see the high travelers coming in as well as the locals. So it was a great spattering of human beings that came. And then also in related Chicago news, we have some tickets to give away. I have this. I got a whole script that they've actually given me. I'm gonna be like a real adult radio person right now. We're giving away a pair of VIP weekend passes to Pride Fest Milwaukee that gives you all access to all the stages, all the shows, including Wisconsin's largest dance floor with international superstar DJs, which bless their heart, they're in Wisconsin at the time, so it's going to be emotionally difficult for them. But at the same time, they'll have such a great crowd. It should be exciting. The 2018 Pride Awards with guest speaker Danica Rome, which will be really awesome, on June 8th. Then Fire Up Your Engines at the first annual Ride with Pride on June 9th. And then you take the Pride Shuttle to the Milwaukee Pride Parade on June 10th. Winners will receive Miller Brewing products. I can't imagine what those are. Soda and water, complimentary hors d'oeuvres, private bathrooms, which is probably the key, especially after a lot of those Miller Brewing products, let's just say. Dedicated bar service, relaxed table setting, VIP cocktail bar, 2 free cocktails, a $500 value, great place to watch the Miller stage shows. Contests running on CPT are, by the way, open to all listeners 18 and older, residents of the greater Chicagoland area, Northwest Indiana area. Complete rules are available at the website at WCPT820.com. By clicking on the contest tab just to see if you're available, if you're eligible, rather. Remember to like CPT 820 on Facebook and follow them on Twitter as well. And then, so we're going to give away those tickets, and it's in the probably tail end of next hour. So stick around. Understand that we've only got 2 of those to give away, so it should be quite exciting. I'm very excited for you guys. That being said, we will be talking quite a bit because the Pride Fest, which is really the nation's largest lineup of LGBTQ talent, will be at Pride Fest Milwaukee next weekend, 7th to the 10th, featuring over 50-plus local artists and Wisconsin's largest dance floor, which I don't know if that's largest. I guess it's all of Wisconsin is kind of a dance floor on that weekend. This is one weekend you don't want to miss. Located at the Henry W. Mayer Festival. Gates open at 6 p.m. Thursday, June 7th. Tickets are available at pridefest.com. So we'll be talking about that a bit more because happy Pride Month, everybody. And if you follow me on Twitter, you saw me tweet a couple of QAF pics and the like. It'd be really nice if you're a Queer as Folk fan at any point during Pride Month, if you want to tweet me at Hal Sparks, your favorite clip, your favorite picture from the show, and I'll spread that around to all my followers and, of course, to the rest of the cast. And, so there you go. Now, here's the other big part of this week. We had 2 big, in the world of comedy, I got a phone call, as I often do, to be on CNN International whenever they have a joke problem. Being a comedian who is embroiled in the world of politics, and full disclosure, my stand-up show is what I would call socio-political and not political. I don't necessarily name names or do specific Trump jokes in my stand-up act. I took a lesson from the early part of the 2000s when I was doing stand-up, and I was doing bits about Bush, that I noticed that if I mentioned the man's name, there were a bunch of people in the audience who agreed with me on the concept, but because I said his name, their ears shut. And rather than just kind of stomp my feet and go, damn it, I'm going to, call him out by name, I decided to take a more subtle tack and just make fun of guys who wear cowboy hats who don't have any cows because they're afraid of them, that kind of stuff. Don't shoot your friend in the face while hunting jokes, where I could literally mock them by, standing on the edge of the line and being as big a jerk as possible without giving them an excuse to pull the ripcord and not listen anymore. You can't. The minute you say George W. Bush in your joke, I'm out of here because the terrorists win. That kind of thing. So I think it's really important, as a stand-up, to include everyone in the idea. And this is just my own personal philosophy on it. It doesn't, obviously, there are amazing political comedians who name names. I've had the joy of working with John Fugelsang on many, many shows, and he is hyper-specific in what he's talking about, and it is kind of that contrast that makes the shows we've done together so much fun. That being said, when you go into the world of what makes a joke political, that line is all over the place right now. And there was a very distinct, the fallout from Roseanne tweeting a racist simile, and I hesitate to call it a joke because it wasn't funny. The biggest problem I have with the kind of argument that was Roseanne's joke over the line wasn't a joke. It was a racist simile. For it to be a joke, there has to be some element of surprise within the content of it, and it either has to be a moral or sort of, I guess, factual left turn that breaks the logic line, that kind of idea. Roseanne saying someone who was in the Obama administration, relating them to an ape, and an African American person to boot, is a simile she has made before, and is not meant to be a joke. It's meant to be an insult, and I make that distinction very specifically as a comedian. I understand that a lot of jokes are insulting, but not all insults are jokes, is my point. And I don't think she was joking in that moment. I think she was being insulting. And there's a huge difference. Okay, but anyways, so CNN International calls me in to be on, to kind of, because comedian has walked into a rake again, and I'm there to dissect, right? And I was unavailable because it was on my son's birthday, and I check out all day on that on that day, and I'm not engaged in the rest of the world, so it kind of snuck up on me. And then the fallout from the Samantha Bee joke on Wednesday came. Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, yeah. So, and the balancing act of these two, was if one person is being punished for a joke, then the other person is being punished for a joke. So this is the false equivalency action. And Trump brought this up very specifically and said, "What he never got an apology when they canceled Roseanne. He deserves an apology over his megalomaniacal gibberish again." But again, here's the thing: both Samantha Bee and Roseanne were not joking in those moments. They were being insulting. Samantha Bee was doing it within the context of a pattern of jokes. Roseanne's was out of the blue. It was she was responding to somebody, but it wasn't this diatribe about Valerie Jarrett, and that you could somehow relate what was in it to Planet of the Apes in a non-racial sense. Let's just say you couldn't go that that she believes in total anarchy, run amok, or just let whatever your analogy that is non-racial to Planet of the Apes is. That there was no continuance there that she could argue for. Whereas Samantha Bee was making she was breaking down why Ivanka Trump is a hypocrite, why she is, she presents this sort of nonsensical, I'm supporting women idea, and another woman who is also in power, having her own show, decided to call her out on it, and used a slur that's. And I hesitate to call it a slur. It's a genitalia specific insult, and I don't have a problem with that word. I use it in my act sometimes. I don't always use it for women though. So I do use the C word in my act to make a very specific point at certain times, even if it's about that word itself. That being said, both of these were insults. Both of them weren't jokes. The difference is. Woman to woman, I think there's an even playing field in making that reference. Roseanne's racist simile doesn't even belong in the entire category of it's a separate conversation that does it that raising it to the level. We got to take a break, but raising it to the level of normalcy is the problem. Raising it to, she insulted somebody, she said something awful about a woman, and she said something awful about a woman, so therefore these are both the same. is the dangerous part of this. I find, one to be an act of violence and one to be a standard linguistic insult that, quite frankly, if you go to Ireland or Scotland, you're going to hear all the time. And it's not that uncommon, quite frankly, in Canada, which I believe is where Samantha Bee is from, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, we'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. And Trump is now shortening the time between his lies, his flip-flops, to, I think the new record is he does it in a paragraph. So we'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Go to housesparks.tv and join us in the chat room. Was no safe bet. The bullet screamed to me from somewhere.
On February 27, 1973, several hundred Sioux tribe members converged on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota to protest a corrupt tribal government. Thus began a 71-day occupation of Wounded Knee, the site of the historic 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre.
Antonio,
the number
can you
of protesters grew,
cut the news
and
going
many
my way?
willingly put their lives on the line for social justice and equitable treatment under the law.
Antonio?
Federal agents were called in, and numerous firefights erupted.
Thank you.
2 Sioux men were killed, and 1 FBI agent was seriously injured. The protesters surrendered on May 8th. 1,200 people were arrested. The 1973 occupation of Wounded Knee called global attention to unsafe living conditions and the mistreatment of Native Americans by federal and local agencies. You can learn more about this event and the people who participated at IndianCountryMediaNetwork.com. And please stay vigilant about our civil rights. The fight is never over.
When it's pouring rain, or even when storms are in the forecast, do you have a sinking feeling because you're worried about all the stuff in your basement getting wet? Hi, I'm Roy Spencer from Permaseal. We've wet basements and structural foundations.
So, let's see. I'm trying to roll back to the. Let's see, Joyce.
Had leaking wall cracks will likely happen again, and that's where Permaseal.
Manson was ambient murder.
Count on us for honest answers and expert advice to get your basement and your life back in order. What makes Permaseal your best choice?
Let's see. Personally, I was not at all influenced by Sandy's comment. Yeah. Racism versus vulgar racism isn't heard in the right-wing world. I agree with that. Yeah.
Satisfaction for our clients, and that's how we earned an A+ rating.
There's data on lives per minute. Not kidding. Yeah.
421 seal today for a free.
Any of you know any cops? I know lots of cops. Hal, I bet it feels great to be at home. It does. Although I have to admit, it feels a bit weird too.
Have you ever been turned down because of
Cam's at his mom, so he comes in Monday, so I'm very excited about that. And that's, then I'll feel home. Otherwise, I feel kind of like empty nest syndrome. How's doing the Ice House on an upcoming Thursday night? Yeah, July 12th. I will be at the Ice House in Pasadena. That's right. And then I'm going to be in Wisconsin and Minneapolis in September. Those are the only dates I have up right now because of the China show. So it's kind of thrown up everything a monkey wrench.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
So the president received a former spy head. By the way, it feels a bit weird going off on what feels like a bit of a conspiracy theory rant when it comes to Donald Trump these days, just because his comfort with certain rulers, whether it be Duterte or Erdogan or, quite frankly, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, like this is the clique that Donald Trump feels comfortable in. And the president of Mexico, and thank you, Sandra, so much for the super chat. The president of, anybody from the EU, the president of Mexico, the Prime Minister of Canada, these are all villains in Donald Trump's world. And I think it says a lot about how he pictures himself. And, you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with most. And in his own head, it seems that Donald Trump hangs out most with Duterte, Erdogan, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, and I guess Xi Jinping. And what he does seem to envy in all these guys is that they have seemed to have found a way to hold on to power regardless of how the voters feel over time. Like, this is just like a permanent status. It seems the most enviable thing. And never let us not forget that the right wing were constantly running stories about how Obama was going to cancel the election, extend his, eliminate term limits, and then, modify the election to get into office or whatever. And now that, when Donald Trump jokes about it or praises other leaders who've managed to do it, they shrug it off like nothing. But it seems in particular very odd that he invites Lavrov, the effectively, one of many KGB heads, into the Oval Office with an incredible amount of comfort, joking that he got rid of Comey because the guy was a nut job and he was making his life harder, and by getting rid of him, he got off the hook for, the Russia thing, the whole Trump-Russia thing is a hoax, so he's off my back now. I fired him over Russia, but I never said that, but we'll get into that later. And then he invites in a representative from Kim Jong-un to who brings a letter to him from Kim, a hand-delivered letter. Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump has a thing against email. I think it, bit him in the ass at some point a long time ago, or he's just paranoid in general, and the same thing that makes him not, like, he likes to eat fast food that was just picked up because you can't poison it, is the same thing that makes him nervous about using email because, ask his opponent in the last election cycle what the consequences of email are. And all the people in his organization who've used email or consistently using email, they've got a lot of problems coming to them. Michael Cohen's digital devices have all been, snatched up by the SDNY prosecutors and by Robert Mueller. The same thing with, Manafort, even though Manafort's, you could arguably say that Manafort's big moment in the bear trap was the Ukrainian handwritten ledger, all right? So I guess the idea that Trump feels comfortable with anything he can burn as long as he can get to it first, right? Or shred or what have you. And so in this, in the last week, so he gets this hand-delivered letter from the former head, the North Korean equivalent of the head of the KGB, who has become, effectively their Secretary of State, right? And welcomes the guy into the White House, into impromptu meeting without any planning. The guy walks in. I'm guessing they didn't want to embarrass him by frisking him or giving him, making him walk through a metal detector. It's just an off-the-cuff meeting, right? And he hand delivers this letter to Donald Trump, which says God knows what. I have my own doubts about whether we will ever see what it said. I also have my own suspicions about this entire summit argument. I mean, let's fall back. I know it's very difficult to go through the what if Obama did this situation with Trump, because we've pegged that meter February of last year. We pegged that meter, right? If Obama or if Clinton had been in office and he'd done anything that Trump had done up till February of last year, they would be calling for an instant impeachment. They would be, screaming chants of lock her up, lock him up over these kind of things, and arguably were, quite frankly. So, but Trump he invites in these these folks. He gets this handwritten letter, and then he says, and again, if Obama had, think of the Iranian deal. Trump hates the Iranian deal. It's a bad deal, probably the worst deal ever struck. Keep in mind, the deal with Iran stopped their nuclear ambitions. It stopped their production of nuclear weapons. It gave, it got inspectors in. It gave them, a window of inspection. There were, the sanctions being lifted, and the money that was returned, by the way, was seized money that had been sitting in accounts. If we had released those sanctions and not given their money back to them after we had seized that, we would be in violation of international law and, quite frankly, our own laws. So these pallets of money that Trump is like, we just gave them this money. It's their money. We gave it back to them after we sat on it for a very long time. The fact, the amazement that should come from, oh my God, we're giving them these pallets of money, is that we gave them back their pallets of money, and oh my God, look how much money of theirs we were sitting on all this time. Now, if only we were as hardline with money seized by Russians, but we'll get into that later as well. So Trump has this big problem with the Iranian deal, right? Can you imagine if during the negotiations for the Iran deal, the former head of the Iranian Secret Service, who was acting in, as a State Department level liaison. Thank you, Billy, for the super chat. That's awesome. If at any point, if Obama had just said, I'm just going to let the head, a former head of the Iranian CIA, effectively, come into the White House for a chit chat, a couple hours, and he's going to deliver to me a handwritten note from Ahmadinejad. Are you kidding me? I mean, run that through your head. Okay, and understand, by the way, that there's a lot of parallels between, Iran and North Korea in terms of them having, American or European citizens as, effectively hostages that they had jailed and called spies, done all that. And again, just a year ago, Trump is, calling the guy names. They sent a guy. They gave a prisoner back in this exchange, and Trump wanted huge credit for this, and the guy was effectively brain dead, and perished days after he was returned. But that's water under the bridge with Trump. If you can imagine Iran sending back, we got to take a break. If you can imagine Iran sending a hostage back, and that effectively they had injected with mad cow disease, and the person was, in the state of Terry Schiavo, for example, to use a right wing, fire point. What would be the response from the right? But Trump has invited into the White House without any vetting the former head of the KGB and the former head of and the current head of the FSB and the former head of the North Korean spy agency, and is exchanging handwritten notes in envelopes hidden from view. And the right is completely cool with this. They are 100% down with this. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
I'm Welton Gaddy. On the next State of Belief Radio, the Supreme Court session is drawing to a close, and there are critically important rulings still to come.
Say again, sorry?
We'll get a review from author, activist, and
okay, cool. And I'm still getting news coming my way.
Also,
and the breaks.
Eye-opening new report on race.
Because I can't hear you talk over them.
We'll hear from the Reverend Peter Larman, one of the authors. And a nationwide campaign to challenge voter suppression and encourage civic encouragement at every level of government with PICO Network Faith in Action Fund Executive Director Andrea Martin. Be sure to
I can still hear
visit
it.
us
Yeah.
at stateofbelief.com and be sure to tune in for Religion and Radio Done Differently. Sunday afternoon at 3 on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
You're never going to get as much sleep as you want. That's why you need to make every hour of sleep you do get really count. Hi, I'm Scott Tannen, founder of Boll & Branch. Our sheets are handcrafted from pure, fair trade, 100% organic cotton. Hundreds of thousands of Americans, including 3 U.S. presidents, sleep better than ever on Boll & Branch sheets. If you order today, we'll give you $50 off your first set of sheets with promo code SLEEP, spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. Promo code SLEEP.
There we go. That did it. Thanks, Antonio. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Back up now that I can hear the normals. Here we go.
We're coming back.
Cool.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. So let's. I think we have a caller on the line. Who do we have, Antonio? Oh, now I can't hear you. Is that how it works? Is that the whole?
We have Tim on the line here.
Okay, cool. Hey, Tim. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Hal. I'm from Milwaukee, so I appreciate the plug for Milwaukee's Pride Fest.
Absolutely.
But I want to talk about a couple things that we're doing as progressives that I think we have to redirect ourselves. We spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror, and we need to forget about the dust storm that Trump and all the Republicans are kicking up to take our focus off the future.
Okay.
So there's two things that are really important. I gave one to Norman Goldman. I'd love to hear this phrase all the time. It's repeal and replace Republicans.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
Phrase on what they did to Obamacare.
Right.
And keep repeating that.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I'd like to suggest, and for anybody across the country who's here in your show, who's in a state where cannabis is not legal, get ballot measures out there, even if they're just questionnaires. Milwaukee's got the ballot initiative in November to say should marijuana be legalized,
right,
or decriminalized.
Right.
So if you're in a state where you don't have that, take action now.
Right.
And start doing things to get people out in November, and let's kind of forget about the dust storm that they kick up every day.
Gotcha. Okay, I like the idea of the repeal and replace Republicans, and I like the idea of if obviously my state is just, I'm living in California right now, has legalized pot for recreational use. Nevada has done that as well, so has Colorado. There's clearly an advantage to that on a bunch of fronts, but I think the one tying point that for both of your suggestions is voting, is no matter what, voting for the most progressive person that you can, and then voting for the person that will take out the Republican, is essentially, because you can't repeal and replace them if you don't vote, and I think the most important focus of the entire, of the next cycle is voting, is engagement, is, and if you don't feel that your local Democratic party is left enough for you, the best thing you can do is actual personal engagement with them, and then if you feel that a candidate is not getting enough attention, or you think they should be doing better against their primary opponent, then by all means volunteer for them, make phone calls, make your own flyers, donate your time, because ultimately that's what it boils down to. This sort of like haphazard disengagement that has been an unfortunate side effect of left-wing politics for a very long time, which is simply, vote. It's a constant habit with the majority of Americans, the ones that vote anyways, is vote in a presidential year, lay off in the midterms, and you just can't. You just have to be involved. You have to be engaged. So I like both those suggestions. I appreciate the call, and I will. I like the repeal and replace Republicans idea as well. Thanks so much. So and the here. By the way, let me see if the audio on this can be good enough. This is Trump talking about the letter he received. We'll see if it audio wise it comes through well enough. Hopefully. Can I get it to play? Let's see. Where is he? Okay. Why won't I play? All right. There we go. I think this is it. So this is him talking on the White House lawn right after he sat through this whole meeting with Kim Jong-un's representative, who was he had sorry, I can't get that clip right now. I feel like somebody on CNN right now. Do we have the clip? We don't have the clip. I'll pull that up again in a moment. I have to reload the page. But ultimately, he says it was a great letter, super great letter. Boy, you would just die if you got to see what was in this letter. See if I can get this back up again.
Don't forget, this was a meeting where a letter was given to me by Kim Jong-un, and that letter was a very nice letter. Oh, would you like to see what was in that letter? Would you like? How much? How much? How much? Give us a flavor of what the letter. It was a very interesting letter, and at some point I may be appropriate, and maybe I'll be able to give it to you. Maybe you'll be able to see it, and maybe fairly soon. But really, this was a
remember all those words.
Letter presentation that ended up being a 2-hour conversation. What was your response to the letter? Did you send anything back? No, I didn't. I haven't seen the letter yet. I purposely didn't open the letter. I haven't opened it. I didn't open it in front of the director. I said, would you want me to open it? He said, you can read it later. I may be in for a big surprise, folks.
I mean, literally. Like, he literally is making a joke that he's going to charge the reporters money. Like, how much would you pay me to see this letter? By the way, the kind of language a billionaire uses, right? Every billionaire you hear is always trying to drum up more direct cash. And, the kind of billionaire who has to pay back $130,000 in installments. The kind of billionaire who, a good portion of his properties wouldn't be afloat right now if he hadn't jacked up the cost of joining so you could hang out with the new president, kept their roles secret, and made the Secret Service and the government pay top market price for everything that they do on any of his properties. So that in and of itself, an absurdity. There is how to phrase it. There is a coming storm for this president that is obvious to anybody watching, and you can see his sort of ratchet up about a lot of different stories, his sort of overreaction to certain things, his tweets, and they become more manic the more the Mueller investigation is closing in on him. And I understand. Let's address for a second kind of what our last caller was saying, and it's an important point, and we hear this a bunch. That we need to focus on other issues and not Trump, and the Russian engagement is not as big a deal. His bizarre tweets or his saying things or whatever aren't that important story-wise or what have you. There's a lot of pushback about that, and I think it's mostly bore out of sort of an exhaustion at the difficulty of just listening to the man speak, right? But I do think it's important, and I think one of the biggest reasons why you should be relentless in your pushback and, quite frankly, your mocking online and through whatever sources you can of this president it should be, relentless, ongoing, and anytime he speaks one of his obvious lies or whatever, there should be a tremendous amount of pushback. Anytime he attacks the rule of law, there should be an immense amount of dissection that goes around this, because that is the danger of without that, there's a danger of normalizing his behavior. That the minute you're kind of like, you know what, it's kind of, it's just more of the stuff he does, that's what normalizes it. Every single instance where this guy effectively, and I think that our chat room is saying it right, where he's effectively trolling the country, deserves pushback. And the amount of effort that you put forth in pushing back on that is relatively minimal thanks to social media. But I do think it's important that brick by brick of, when he tweets something, the volume of human beings saying, you are lying back to him, this is racist, this is nonsense, you are allowing international criminals, people who embezzle from their own country at the expense of their own people, to share the Oval Office with you while excluding our EU and North American partners who are trying to create a more balanced society for their citizens. Every time he doesn't sign, the declaration on Pride Month, every time he issues some sort of racist, sexist, or dismissively nationalistic attitude, or is callous towards people who are, he's intentionally harming for just the joy of his own followers. Each one of those deserves pushback. And again, I think this might be rooted in the idea that he's not really a narcissist. I've argued this a bunch of times. I think he actually has low self-esteem. The biggest problem that Donald Trump has is that he's actually afraid of being unmasked. He's, the emperor has no clothes. It is something that he fears, and I think that's an important element of why to push back on this man. We'll take a break. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Have you done the live read yet?
I did. I did it at the top of the hour.
I just wanted to make sure. Was that at the beginning of the show then?
Yeah, I did kind of both of them in a row, and that's our caller even referenced them. But yeah, I'll do it again too. I want to make sure we get it in. I'll probably do it on the way out of this hour too. I mean, we only have to do it once an hour, but I'd like to do it a couple more times. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Mm-hmm. And then you're not hearing us anymore, right?
No, I'm not. I'm hearing you, but I'm not hearing the news. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Good. Okay.
Hold on one second. Drawing up stories. How you doing, chat room, by the way? Nice, Charles. Similarity between Trump's reality show and his presidency is the belief that if he says something, it's true. That makes it true. I agree, Carl. And a tremendous amount of people, follow through with that. I mean, I think it's a sad lesson about how we in this country. Wow, Donna, thank you so much. Oh, and a nod to 44. That's awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk in the next hour about Obama's statement about him being 10 years too early. That's going to that's going to start off our next hour. Hey, Amos. Indeed. Let's see. Still getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, left over from being in China. Yeah, thank you guys. Every little bit helps. We really appreciate it. I have
30 seconds.
Thank you. I have my goat kind of situation happening. It's just I don't have enough here to connect, so I just shaved them off, and it created kind of more of a mustachy look. And since I'm hidden behind here, it looks just like, I look silly with just a mustache. It's weird. I've tried it before. It's odd. I just had a Gee, what's this song? I'm not familiar with it in any way.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
That's, of course, our lovely Lady B, who's, she's out this week. Antonio is filling in. Thank you so much, by the way, Antonio, for filling in first. It's good to have you here, by the way. And we are, I'm going to do that before I get, kind of into my next rant about stuff. I want to read let me see if I can find it again. For next week. Get ready next week, presenting Pride Fest Milwaukee, a celebration of LGBT community, June 7th through the 10th, featuring Daya, Jussie Smollett, the B-52s, Gold, Lex Allen, many other people saying +1 to support diverse and resilient and local LGBTQ health and wellness. Don't just listen to today's hottest hits. Dance to them on Wisconsin's largest dance floor at the Milwaukee Pride Fest, June 7th to the 10th. Weekend passes are available now at a discount rate at pridefest.com. Live proud. Don't miss out for 4 days. Don't miss out on 4 days of nonstop music and living proud. Tickets available at pridefest.com. So next week, and have an awesome Pride Month, everybody. We'll be talking as we go over the month about LGBT related bills and candidates who are coming up. I think it's awesome that Danica Rome is going to be speaking at Milwaukee Pride Fest. That's fantastic. She's terrific, a wonderfully articulate voice. She was terrific. I don't know if any of you saw her on Rachel's show this week. She was fantastic, and just you could tell she was so excited to be on Rachel's show. I've been on Rachel's show. I know how she feels. There is a joy that kind of comes over to you, and you're kind of sitting there with her, and she just had this grin she couldn't wipe off her face. It was really sweet to see, quite frankly. So as we go forward into this election cycle, there are two things the Republicans are counting on to help them during this thing. One is the economy, and the economy is effectively where it would have been 2 years into the Obama administration if George Bush hadn't wrecked it, essentially. That we've been on something in the order of 90 months of uninterrupted job growth, I think, over the and the Obama economy, which was a patch job from the very beginning, that if literally Trump would have to reside over the growth he's had for the last year for the next 6 years to create the same amount of growth in the stock market that Obama did. A lot of Republicans often like to go, well, there's 11 million more people are on food stamps because during the Obama years than were before, and you're like, yeah, that happened in the first 8 months after the crash because the entire economy was wrecked by the laissez-faire Ayn Rand philosophy of the Bush administration. And we are now entering this area where they are really coming to this is classic Republican thinking that bank regulation and anti-pollution regulation is so bad for business that we have to eliminate as much of it as possible to really let the market just be free to do whatever it's doing. And again, having Beijing in China has made huge headway in the last year improving the air quality, but literally they're playing catch up because they have effectively had unregulated and environmentally toxic growth around the Beijing area, creating a ring of factories around the city that just basically, no matter which way the wind blew, there was enough pollution to just blanket the entire city and make the air unbreathable. And these are the reasons why you have rules and regulations. These are the reasons why you protect your environment, why you check things out before you allow them to just willy-nilly be built. And so the weird thing is, and by the way, the amount of growth that the Chinese are seeing right now, just in terms of the volume of human beings since they stopped the one-child policy, is enormous, and the amount of just growth that energy needs and food needs that country is going to need to have over the next 15 to 20 years is mind-blowing. And their first order of business is the management of that. Trump, on the other hand, has this. I mean, this was probably the weirdest sort of under the radar story that happened this week, which was Trump effectively ordering people to help coal and nuclear. This is from NPR. President Trump has ordered Energy Secretary Rick Perry. God, that's a weird 4 words to throw together. To take immediate steps to help financially troubled coal and nuclear power plants. A draft plan, marked confidential, is being circulated around Washington. No one from the Trump administration has confirmed to NPR that the draft is an official document. Still, the White House issued a statement in response to news about the plan, saying the U.S. electric grid is at risk because of coal and nuclear plant shutdowns, called retirements in the industry, because factories and nuclear plants, they decay over time. They have to be replaced or broken down. So unfortunately, impending retirements of fuel-secure power facilities are leading to a rapid depletion of the critical part of our nation's energy mix and impacting the resilience of our power grid. President Trump has directed Secretary of Energy Rick Perry to prepare immediate steps to stop the loss of these resources and looks forward to his recommendations. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said in a statement, coal and nuclear plants are in trouble because across much of the country they're having trouble competing with cheaper forms of electricity generated by natural gas and renewable energy. The draft plan would require power grid operators to buy electricity from struggling plants over the next 2 years to prevent more from shutting down. So understand this. It is cheaper for cities and major power brokers, literal power brokers, to buy renewable and natural gas, which is got its own environmental problems, but they are dwarfed by the environmental problems that come along with coal. The government, the Trump administration, is ordering people, cities, states, government purchasers of energy, to buy them from failing old fossil fuel forms over their own financial interests, to keep those soon-to-be retired, useless, more expensive forms of energy online longer. Can somebody tell me what the Republicans said about winner? The government shouldn't be picking winners and losers in the energy department. That of the infrastructure-based and growth-based investments that the Obama administration made to try and jumpstart green tech in the United States, that worked, by the way, worked so well that Trump is actually having to force cities and states to buy coal and nuclear energy in spite of cheaper energy. Literally, the Obama administration's push towards green tech was so quick and so functional and so efficient that these retiring old systems the Trump administration is making states buy this. And what was the solar company that Obama supposedly was wasting millions of dollars on? For God's sake, we'll be back. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be back right after this. Go to WCPT820.com. Follow me at House Sparks on Twitter. Solyndra, thank you. Yeah. Oh, this is just him, I mean, this reeks of more of that crony capitalism nonsense, where he's trying to help the coal industry as a way of, kind of buying his way back into the voting, the hearts of those coal voters. Hi, Carrie. Yeah. I have to say, like, the face-to-face part of doing the show was really extraordinary. I was so excited to see everybody that came down. And we're going to do that again, by the way. I think, I don't know, we'll be able to do it. It depends on timing. If we'll be able to do it when I'm doing stand-up in September, but it'll probably be either that or the following weekend. And maybe coupled with a show. That would be the goal next time. Do some stand-up, and tie that together. I've been sick all week. Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie. Green drinks. That's all I have to say. Was that a plastic straw? Yes, it is. Well, in Chicago, for sure. One of the things I want to do, though, is do some more kind of live events while I'm, out and about in different parts of the country. If I can find a location that has a strong enough internet connection, which is always the tough part, I should be able to roll out with, a rig and hopefully the improved setup, he said, with his fingers crossed, because the software froze twice before the show started this morning and had me scrambling again. Hopefully that gets to a point where I can kind of operate that on the fly in a couple of places and just roll in with, a couple of cameras and a microphone and do the show. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, it might be to the point where I have to do it from people's backyards. I just don't want to invite everybody over. Well, no need to brag, EO. So yeah, I definitely want to do one, here in LA. It's obviously a little bit harder because the show's on way earlier. Doing it on the East Coast is clearly the easiest. Oh, yeah, that's true, Rocky Mountain Mike. With better sound absorption. Oh, thanks. All right, yeah. This isn't too bad. Yeah. Yeah. Peabody Energy Corp, their stock went up $2 after Trump's plan came out. Do one in San Francisco. That's a great idea. Alan from Brazil, you plan to come to Brazil someday? Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, like, of all of South America, Brazil is the one place I want to go. It's funny that, that travel-wise, and it's, I only got so much time, and I'm a dad, so there's only so much time I can spend, traveling the world. But most of my travel has been in Asia, shortly followed by Europe, and then of course the time I've lived in Canada. Vegas should be. Yeah, I agree. Vegas should be the next place. Actually, it kind of is, Natalie. I think I'm doing the show from our house there next week. Yeah.
1 minute.
Okay, cool. Looking at that white guitar. Yeah, that's hold on 1 second. A better look at it. I'll be happy you're permitted to be a dad. I don't think they really had any say. Yeah. I'm very happy.
Here we go.
Thanks.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Fuss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So, continuing that story I was telling about the coal energy and the nuclear energy, after that draft plan by the Trump administration and his little speech to coal groups, where he said, I don't know if any of you caught him going, we're going to be looking into that 202, which sounds like, he's praising their area code, like, you're down with the 310 or something. What he was referring to was a measure known as 202C, which is a moment where, in the case of an energy emergency in the United States, you can force, this purchase of energy or forced production of energy. The country's largest grid operator, PJM Interconnection, said in a statement, there's no need for any such drastic action. The operator for the much of the mid-Atlantic, it says it has secured reliable supplies through 2021-2022, and that this kind of federal intervention would be damaging to the markets and more costly to consumers. But this is a promise that Trump made to his buddies in the coal companies. And any surprise that the stocks for companies like Peabody Coal, their stock went up $2 on news of that plan. It jumped nearly $2 after the New York Stock Exchange began trading on Friday, yesterday. The National Mining Association said in a statement that it has not received details of the plan for the DOE. NMA spokeswoman Ashley Burke says we need a plan to preserve the reliable, affordable energy that continues to slip away each day, and it is encouraging that this administration is taking the issue seriously. Seriously? Seriously. Thank you, James. And thank you, Akf and Michelle, so much for your super chats. It's really awesome. The show, in many ways, floats on your super chats, and if you go to patreon.com/HalSparks, you can become a Patreon patron of the show and help us continue, because we do this, I do this show for free, and the money that we do raise through advertising goes to support the station. So anything you do is greatly appreciated. That being said, get ready for the nation's largest lineup of LGBTQ-friendly talent only at Pride Fest Milwaukee next weekend, June 7th to the 10th, featuring over 50-plus local artists and Wisconsin's largest dance floor. This is one weekend you do not want to miss. Located at the Henry W. Mayer Festival. Gates open at 6 p.m. on Thursday, June 7th. Tickets are available now at pridefest.com. And we're going to be giving away 2 passes to the to Pride Fest VIP weekend passes into the show today. We'll take some calls. We'll have to clear the phone lines during the quarter hour. Sorry, say again. Do we have a call?
1 pair of passes.
Oh, so we have a pair of passes, beg your pardon. VIP weekend passes to Pride Fest Milwaukee, including, access to all the shows on all the stages, the dance floor, the Pride Awards with guest speaker Danica Rome on June 8th, the Fire Engine's first annual Ride with Pride on June 9th, and then take the Pride Shuttle to the Milwaukee Pride Parade on June 10th. You get a bunch of Miller brewing products if you're of age, because you have to be 18 to win, but obviously with the alcohol involved, I don't know what the rules are. I think we might have to be over 21 in theory, yeah? Or you just don't get those parts. I'm not quite sure how that's supposed to work.
That's why soda is also included.
That's true. Okay, so yes, there is soda and water and complimentary hors d'oeuvres and all that kind of stuff. I think if you're under 21, you just don't get the Miller brewing products, or maybe you get a Miller beer-shaped floaty for your pool or something. I don't know what the rules are. All right, so there you go. So we'll be giving that away later on. The rules for the contest are available at WCPT820.com. Just go to contest, see if you apply, and then you can call later on, and it'll be very exciting. Now, so Trump is bailing out the coal industry while this is all happening. There is a constant refrain from this, White House that they are, there's, here's one of the things. So the Trump organization, the Trump administration is putting together on June 12th this meeting in Singapore with Kim Jong-un and Trump, and he received his personal letter, which I think was in the shape of a cootie catcher, and he had to roll it back and pick a number, pick a color, okay, and then we'll meet in Singapore. And I'll tell you, you're a big dummy. And so he's called it off, and then they're moving ahead, and it might take. And now he's saying it might take a couple of these summits. It might take 3 or 4. Keep in mind, if any of these moves had been made with the leaders or the representatives of Iran during the Iran deal that were similar to this, like I said, like inviting them into the White House, the madness on the right would be overwhelming. I mean, they already think that the Obama White House was, basically a puppet government of the Muslim Brotherhood. But so they've got to have this meeting June 12th. And one of the weird parts about it is they're having a hard time finding hotel rooms for the North Koreans. Tradition says that the hosting country should pay the bill at their guest's preferred location, which would be Singapore. For North Korea, their preferred hotel is the Fullerton. I don't know why, but this is where they would like to stay, is the Fullerton. A luxury hotel in Singapore that costs nearly $6,000 a night for executive suite. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Joe Hagan is helping to lead the logistical efforts for the summit. Hagan said the U.S. is open to paying for the bill, but is considering asking Singapore, the host country, to pay for North Korea's portion. This is because impoverished North Korea could potentially be embarrassed if the U.S. covered the cost. That's not quite why. I think if the reality is, if we footed the bill for all this money, for people who had returned some of our citizens effectively dead and have been threatening us with nuclear weapons, and the summit doesn't actually require them or involve them getting rid of their nuclear weapons, then it'll be really embarrassing that you paid for their minibar. That's a bigger problem. Do-Yun Kim, a fellow at the Korean Peninsula Future Forum, said there are legitimate mechanisms built in for exemptions depending on the circumstance, but this could run into public and political criticism and send the wrong message to North Korea. Now, there is obviously a real problem with expecting the Trump organization, the Trump administration, finding you hotel rooms, considering during the G20 summit, if you'll recall, last year, that Trump and his entire organization had forgot to book hotel rooms for the G20, and they had to stay in, I think the president stayed in like a German guest house of one of the politicians. So I don't know if these are the best people to make the, you start getting, a little upset when you have a group of people who are in charge of coordinating everything like this, who are not, all the deep state people, quote unquote, that used to arrange for all this stuff have been fired because they're awful Obama loyalists who want to make sure the grass is mowed, the trees don't die, the food served in the White House is adult fare, for grown-up food, and that's just a bunch of Obama establishment government claptrap. So we can't have that. So we'll see. And Antonio, do we have other callers on the line? I just want to, as we sneak up on this break. If we do, we'll grab them on the other side. So we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. I hate this song. Really annoys me, this beat. I never liked it anyway. You had a strawberry and Toblerone breakfast last Sunday? What a decadent, ridiculous breakfast that is. Yeah, they had to Airbnb it. I wonder if it's possible that Trump's people mixed up the invitation between Kim Jong-un and Kim Kardashian. Yeah. Kim, thanks for coming. You're a lot more voluptuous and your hair looks a lot longer than it looks in your picture. I never thought.
No calls, by the way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And sorry about playing that song.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't really have a White Stripes issue or whatever until I saw that thing with Jack White and I think it was Jimmy Page and I want to say Eric Clapton or something like that. But they sat around and was like amazing guitar players sit and talk, and he was like the young guy, and they were all like talking about this song, and they all started jamming together. And he's like, I don't know that, but we can play one of mine. Like, okay, then you're not then you're not good, dude. You don't deserve to be sitting in the circle. Like,
I agree.
You didn't make it to the circle because they didn't. Even the songs, the newer songs, they were like, yeah, I know that song, and they started playing it because they're talented. He was like, no, just my stuff. And they played one of his songs, and it just seemed like a crowbar. Like he's forcing these legends to play him, and I was like, go away. So yeah, we got a rear view window close later. All right, calm down. Kanye will be like, leave her alone. That's my boo. I don't know. I don't think so. If Kanye wants Trump to call him back, he needs a big fight, right? I didn't play it. I don't play the songs, Denise. There you go. Invite yourself to Singapore, then ask your host to pay the bills. So that's actually standard operating procedure when you have a treaty, that happens or whatever. The host countries actually
30
vie.
seconds.
Okay, thank you. The countries actually vie to be the host country. They ask around and say, would you be willing to host?
We actually have a caller now.
Oh, good. Okay. And it's so that it's neutral ground, we ask a couple of our allies or other, neutral territory kind of countries, and they, it's not expensive for them to do the actual accommodations because then nobody owes anybody when they walk in the door. So it's fairly standard. It's a little better.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Pretty sure that's the first time that Tom Hartman's voice is played at the same time as that metal riff. I'm just going to go out on a limb. We do have a caller, though. Who do we have, Antonio? Who we got? Do we know?
Steve from the
Gold Coast?
Gold Coast, yes.
Hey, Steve from the Gold Coast. We were so worried because we didn't see you last time. We were expecting you to show up at the meet and greet. I don't know why we...
Hello.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Earth to how?
I hear you. Can you hear me? I don't think you can hear me. I don't think...
Okay, this begs the question. Millions of people hearing my voice?
Yes, yes, millions of people are hearing your voice. Let him know, Antonio, that he can...
Well, we shall endeavor to call back.
Yes. No, I can hear you. Antonio, you have to tell him. You have to pop in there because he can't hear my voice. Oh, sad. And all right, well, hopefully he'll call back and we'll get him back on the line. So, Steve, we had him wired up, so we should be fine. I think it's on the same feed as the news noise, and that's why he can't hear my voice coming to him or something. And all of a sudden, it's hard to say.
Okay.
But we'll figure that part of it out when he calls back or whatever. And by the way, much love to Lady B, who is at her granddaughter's baptism right now, which is super sweet. That being said, okay, so let's hopefully we'll get Steve back in just a second. And there was a report this week that there were these cell phone.
Steve back.
Okay, let's see if we can get him. See if he can hear me. And if he can't hear me, you can relay what I'm saying. We'll try to get this out because we can let Steve kind of go a little bit. Steve, are you there?
All right, I think I understand the protocol.
Okay, can you hear me?
So I haven't tuned in late. I did not know that I needed to actually hear Hal in order to do this.
Yes, it's true. It helps.
But, I wanted to make the point, as I'm sure others have made, that we're really facing a fatigue at some point.
Right.
I mean, every other day it's some new scandal that results from another tweet, another outrageous policy declaration on the part of Donald Trump. And again, at some point people have lives to lead. And, there's just a point at which people are going to say, okay, am I supposed to be surprised that this idiot's done something stupid in addition to the 1,001 other stupid things he's done?
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that his short term as president has produced enough scandals the last 5 presidencies.
Right.
But because it's Donald Trump, we just don't expect anything better. At least it's certainly true given his polling data, given who voted for him. These people have no breaking point, apparently. They are willing to put up with whatever he does. And it almost, leads me to believe that he could literally shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in Midtown and still remain in office and still remain popular if it were up to his voters. So, again, how much is too much? I don't know that these people have a breaking point.
Yeah, I've said, though, like I said, you must treat each wound as a fresh wound. It is one of those things like that's why death by 1,000 cuts becomes an inevitable way to die, is because by the time you catch up to patching each cut after a while, the person is dying of septicemia because you can't keep on top of it. I think, quite frankly, with the amount of public scrutiny that's on this president, that if you can't stop him, because obviously a lot of us lack the power that Mueller would have, or the Senate or the Congress would have to hem him in, or the Supreme Court even, we do have the ability as the citizens of the country to constantly be on top of this stuff and not give an inch. And I think it's super important that we don't. I don't think that requires the abject mocking of everything. I think it requires attention. I think it requires detail. I think you have a responsibility to look at what he's doing and be able to dissect it, be an informed member of the public, be informed about how you respond, so that you're not just being, rude for rude's sake. And I think that's arguably how, Samantha Bee got in trouble. Although I completely understand her frustration with the illusion of Ivanka Trump as this person who was supposed to run interference for, women and working families during this presidency and represent sort of a stabilizing voice. And in the early days, we only, there was the illusion, at least, that she was, right? That she was effectively doing this, and we could tell that she was having some effect because Donald Trump's worst crap happened on the Sabbath, happened on sundown, from sundown Friday to sunup to sundown on Saturday. obviously she was curtailing him to some degree, or he wouldn't have gone off the chain when he was freed of her influence during that period. So there's clearly a reference that need be, made to Ivanka Trump's hypocrisy in the face of what her father is doing. And as a odd, unpaid member of the administration, effectively the princess of the Trump administration, the Trump royal family, which is how they are behaving, how they are expecting to be allowed to behave. And for me, I get her pushback about that. And I think, it requires a level of that being as stern as you would be about that, with as many feelings as you have about that strong language works on a show like hers is completely reasonable. That being said, a standard insult that could pertain, could work for anyone, male or female, even though it's specified a female genital related insult. It has been and can be used male and female, wherein what Roseanne did does not apply to the same kind of generic usage. But again, here's the thing: you must treat, if you're managing you can obviously prioritize wounds, but in the case of Donald Trump and his use of Twitter or other statements that he makes, the instant pushback, the sort of liquid skinning, the instant bandaging, the single stitching of every single thing he does, while that we can get to a point of fatigue, that's understandable. I think there's way more value in being vigilant and pushing back on it. I do think that there is that constant gardener aspect is what is necessary in the Trump era. And if anything, can give us the tools and the resiliency that's good when things are normalized again. And they will be at some point. We've been through horrifying periods in our growth as a country, and it will take a lot of work, obviously. But that constant gardener aspect and that awareness of detail and that, keen insight and focus on, maintaining a goal and moving towards it is a necessary thing that under normal circumstances would require you to be aware of, let's say, who the judges are. The amount of headspace it requires to constantly deal with Trump or the Republicans that are hiding behind him. This includes Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. And I think that the exercise in dealing with their daily BS and pushing back on that creates a skill set in you that can actually be ported over to a more normalized form of focused citizenship. And the only difference being is that if the only skill you get from this is the ability to kind of chuck insults back and forth, you don't end up with any benefit. If it does teach you the meaning of the content of the Farm Bill, the content of our energy policy, the content of our foreign policy, the standard practices and why they are important in our foreign exchange with other countries. From a State Department level, if it teaches you constitutional law because this man is violating those norms so often, then ultimately you benefit after the fact. That the Trump period becomes a growth point for you. If you just end up, if everything seems to lump together and all of his stuff seems even, his sort of disgusting, and that's I think the same lesson of the Samantha Bee versus Roseanne thing. If all you end up with is a false equivalency of two circumstances where you kind of they balance out and bump off each other, like a positive and negative proton just kind of refracting, or like north and two north magnets being pushed together. They're the same, so therefore they just reject and move on. They don't actually have any seeds. If you're not in the process cultivating the ability to see the difference, cultivating the ability to dissect and bifurcate these, know the difference between a true offense and a social slight. And this happens within the progressive community as well. That there is a tendency to lump all affronts in as the same, which would be valuable if it rose up kind of the standardized social interaction of human beings to the point of the same discussion about dignity and respect that go along with egregious violence and attacks and those kind of things. But it doesn't. It ultimately waters down the genuine attacks to the point where it creates gaps where people move in and say, well, it's all a wash anyways, and it clearly is not. So again, the goal with the Trump administration is sort of twofold. One is being aware of the legal, political, and constitutional reasons why what he is doing is wrong, and kind of maintaining that memory the next time we're in a situation where we have a Donald Trump or a George W. Bush in office, and they are violating the Constitution in acts of crony capitalism, be it for, Trump obviously, this week saying, I'm looking forward to the jobs numbers, which he had the night before, and none of us would be surprised if he called a few of his buddies and said, hey, by the way, you might want to jump in tomorrow because the stock's going to punch up, in response to these jobs numbers. Or it's, if your industry, it's going to go down, you might want to make a phone call and put a put on it a couple minutes before things open. Those kind of things are stuff we need to be aware of as citizens. And in the case of Donald Trump, again, what skill are you developing while you're the constant gardener of the United States, which is your country, your Constitution, your ideological base. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Is Twitter's biggest promoter. I always hated Twitter. I like Twitter. I find it fun to reach out on there. It's certainly fun in games when it's not all political. I try to extract myself from more of the political stuff sometimes, just so that I can get back into some pop culture fun with people who are on there, and not just use it as a political arm for conversation. But thanks, Kurt. 3 days left to catch the blue wave. Doing my part to get America back on track. Affordable health care, fair tax. Student debt relief, veterans housing, women's rights. Kurt for Congress. Thanks, Kurt. That's awesome. Thank you for the super chat. That's awesome. And James, thanks so much. Yeah, it was so much fun to do the live show last week. It's invigorating. Let's see. I'll send another. Yeah.
1 minute.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
30 seconds.
Cool.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. So there's a story coming out that in an upcoming book about the Obama White House, The World as It Is by Ben Rhodes, who was a Obama advisor, and I guess technically still is, the former president questioned whether he had misjudged the American electorate in months leading up to the end of his administration. A conversation shortly after the 2016 election went like this, according to Rhodes. What if we were wrong? He asked aides riding with him in an armored presidential limousine. He had read a column asserting that liberals had forgotten how important identity was to people and had promoted an empty cosmopolitan globalism that made many feel left behind. Maybe we pushed too far, Mr. Obama said. Maybe people just want to fall back into their tribe. His aides reassured him that he still would have won had he been able to run for another term, and that the next generation had more in common with him than with Mr. Trump. Mr. Obama, the first black man elected president, did not seem convinced. Sometimes I wonder whether I was 10 or 20 years too early, he said. And obviously these are, it's an amazingly introspective, emotional thing to say, and not wrong to think about. One of the signs of an intellectual person is their ability to entertain uncomfortable thoughts, whether or not they turn out to be true or not. There's a value in being able to go, questioning yourself, going, maybe I was wrong. Maybe, quite frankly, I, in doing what I was doing, maybe I was right in why, but wrong in my methods. And the deeper question is, maybe my methods were correct, but I was wrong in my why, which is the question that most people are incapable of addressing on, psychologically on their own. I agree with Brad in our chat room says, or maybe Russia cheated. I think that's absolutely a huge part that played in it. And I think the sort of ginning up of resentment, the playing of tribes, the inflating of tribes, and quite frankly, the inflation of intention that comes from social media, and that kind of, especially as the Obama administration was kind of the first one that was really in the seat of the growing push towards social media. You had CNN and all the networks, doing citizen reporting and having people's tweets and their Facebook responses read on air, and whether they were valued or real is, without ever saying that, almost just by who went to the front without swearing, everything became the C-SPAN call-in shows, which is like free for all. And which sounds nice in a democratic sense, that everyone has a chance, until other people decide to exploit that and push their way to the front of the line, or figure out how to game the system, and therefore get their stuff seen, in a way that disenfranchises, even worse than sort of normalized screening would, right? That's obviously a conversation for another time. I do think that there is an argument that Obama was ahead of his time, and people who are ahead of their time often feel frustrated by the circumstance that they're in. But the wave that comes after them in reaction to, often the backlash that follows to that overreach leads to some very healthy changes, and things like suffrage, the civil rights era, the Civil War itself. There was a rise in abolitionist sentiment in the United States, in the North, especially following the Civil War, that had a backlash to it as some of those Southerners who had lost their livelihood and started to move north to start creating jobs, carrying that resentment with them, and settling in areas that were areas that were sort of abolitionist strongholds and creating divisions within them, and then after a while those resentments turned into them finding their way into the local politics, establishing what they were effectively feeling, and turning the structure of government, if not the populace's attitude, closer to what they would like to see done. And this is, this happens a lot, not in just our country, in every country. There are these vacillations, and it is not hard to see once you've lived long enough, the arc of history that you live in, and there is something to be said about waking up and going, sometimes you're riding the wave. Sometimes you're up on your board surfing, and sometimes you're paddling out and looking for the next wave. And that period can feel, politically hopeless for some people. And our chat room, Maureen, there was a caller on CPT last week that said it would have been better if Hillary had won in 2008 and then Obama would have come after. I think that's possible. Hindsight being 2020, perhaps. There's an argument there. So Obama and then James in our chat room saying President Obama wasn't aware that Russia was pulling out all the stops to block Hillary. I think and I think it grew on him too late. And I think by that time, the Republicans, in their coordination with the Trump campaign and in their kind of joint attitude, had created a circumstance where if you questioned the validity of the Trump win or and certainly the growth of the campaign, if you went, the only reason, at some point somebody said, the only reason Donald Trump won the Republican primary is because the Russians are helping him, is because they're scaring off his opponents and they are financing him through the NRA and all these other sources and blah, blah, blah. It's an argument that, if you'd gotten in early with that argument, you'd have been fine. But by the time the frog was already boiled, by the time somebody really recognized the threat as it was. And so, let's see. And Billy was saying it was not that it was not Obama's time. The people who elected him expected him to do political magic instead of continuing to support him, and then criticized him for not getting enough done. I completely agree with that, Billy. I think he was, the damage, as much as you had the Mitch McConnells and all them gathering together to try and, wreck his presidency from day one, there was certainly not a support structure from from progressives and liberals that was necessary to keep to give that stronger margin, even in the fact of guaranteeing a Democratic wins and pushing for that long-term goal of a more liberal Supreme Court, which is I think we're learning from both Gorsuch and we should have learned from Roberts, and certainly from the idea of letting Scalia run things the way he did, that is ground you cannot afford to give. And I agree that Charles in our chat room was saying this, the stolen Supreme Court seat. I think, quite frankly, that liberals and progressives bear a lot of that guilt as well for this kind of hands-off, well, the hell with them attitude in the last 3 years, especially of his presidency, not having a sort of a long-term strategy and falling into the anti-establishment, instead of addressing directly, corporate Dems and singling them out, just kind of allowing the Blue Dogs to paint the entire Democratic Party with a broad brush, and I think there's that's on us, right? And Rocky Mountain Mike says, I blame Obama for my tan suit. We all do, Mike. Case in point, Obama was deserted in the 2010 elections that allowed the GOP to redistrict a GOP majority in a place with gerrymandering. Absolutely. And that again, you take 100% responsibility for your vote every single time. And does America deserve more than a two-party system? Absolutely. Is there a circumstance where an independent candidate in an office in your district, your state, or whatever has the opportunity to win and really present an alternative? Absolutely. Is it on the presidential level? Almost never. Is it on the senatorial level? Almost never. Oh, I would say never, actually, on both of those. At least not so far. Eventually, absolutely. But those organizations all have to grow organically from the ground up. Otherwise, they effectively just end up spoilers, and what you have is the margin by which votes went to Jill Stein or protest votes stood out or went to Trump in some cases is the margin that Hillary lost the Electoral College in a few different states. And there is I'm willing to have that fight forever and ever and ever. You will not really convince me otherwise, because my goal is to actually have the invested change that we all want, for a more inclusive and supportive society for every citizen, not just to be able to stamp my feet and say, I told you so 6 months later, while ICE agents are tearing mothers away from their children and going butter emails with a shrug, right? We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We're going to take a caller who's going to win 2 VIP passes to the Milwaukee Pride Fest in the next segment. So, Antonio, give me a number, and we'll see who wins it. What do you think? Between 1 and 5.
Let's go with 8.
8. Okay. Wow. Okay. Let's go. Yeah, the 8th caller will get VIP passes to the Milwaukee Pride Fest. It's a pretty sweet deal. We'll be back. That ice crap really makes me mad. The Gestapo lives in the USA. Is someone counting the number of words hell speaks in 2 hours? It's pretty astounding, I have to say. Anyway, happy ending. I rescued someone's wallet last night. Oh, very nice, EO. Good for you. They should have done more after the 2000 election about voter suppression and fraudulent voting machines. I agree. Like 530 at WLS. Yeah, so the... I'll put the number up on the screen. I don't mind doing that. Here you go. 773-763-9278 is the number. If you're in the area and you can go to Milwaukee Pride next weekend, 773-763-9278. 8th caller. According to Antonio. I guess that's our full lines number, so he's trying to fill up the lines. We'll see. It's the worst thing you can imagine. Let me see after. Did you guys hear that Benedict Cumberbatch ran off some hooligans in England? Some delivery guy was getting bonked in the head. Good for him. Happy, unhappy ending. I had to buy another car last weekend. Love the new car. Hate the car payment. Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. So we've got the 8th caller is going to get a pair of VIP tickets, weekend passes to the Pride Fest Milwaukee, allowing you access to all shows on all stages, including the world's largest dance floor, or Wisconsin's largest dance floor. I don't know that it's the world's largest. I'm gonna go with just Wisconsin. But I don't know what that standard is. With international superstar DJs, 2018 Pride Awards with guest speaker Danica Rome on June 8th. Then fire up your engines at the first annual Ride with Pride on June 9th. Finally, take the Pride Shuttle to Milwaukee Pride Parade on June 10th. Winners will receive Miller Brewing products, soda and water, complimentary hors d'oeuvres, private bathrooms, dedicated bar service, relaxed table setting, VIP cocktail bar, 2 free cocktails, if they're of age, of course, a $500 value, and a great place to watch the Miller stage show. And the 8th caller will get those 2 passes now. So call in now, 773-763-9278. For those of you that don't win or can't call in or whatever, get ready for the nation's largest lineup of LGBTQ talent, only at Pride Fest Milwaukee next weekend, June 7th to the 10th. Featuring over 50-plus local artists and Wisconsin's largest dance floor. This is one weekend you do not want to miss. Located at the Henry W. Mayer Festival. Gates open at 6 p.m. Thursday, June 7th. Tickets available now at pridefest.com. There you go. And happy Pride Month, everybody. I will continue to tweet at Hal Sparks.
2 callers.
Oh, we what? We got how many? Do we have
2?
2? Okay, we got 2 callers on the line, and we're still waiting to see who's going to call in and win the one. Let's see. Who do we have first, Antonio?
We have Ron.
Excellent. Hey, Ron, welcome. Ron, how are you? Are you there?
It takes a great leader to admit his mistake. I think that's what President...
Yep.
Are you getting an echo?
Nope, I'm hearing you fine now.
Hello, Hal?
Yep, I hear you. Nope.
Hal, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, Hal.
Antonio, let him know I can hear him, because he can hear you, he can't hear me. That's what usually happens. I can hear you.
He can hear you. He can hear you.
Yeah.
Go ahead with your point.
Yeah. Cool. Is he there? Oh, we lost him. I get the point that he was trying to make, though, because I've lost him now anyways. But I get the point he was making.
In the beginning.
Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
He was pushed, I think, by the Chicago boys, Mayor Daley, Axelrod.
Mm-hmm.
If they had allowed Hillary, she would have won 2 terms. We would have saved the courts. We would have saved probably the House and Senate.
Yep.
And President Obama could have cakewalk in, and we could have done greater things. But I think he's admitting he was 10 years too soon. He did not see the racism that this country holds.
Mm-hmm.
It was just too much to overcome for him at this time. And I'm saying this in the spirit of the next leader we choose, he has got to be strong. He's got to lead from the front. He has to lead the party. Mm-hmm. President Obama did not do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to be knowledgeable of what he can do and what he will do. He cannot have any doubts about his leadership ability, plain and simple. And that's what I'm saying, Hal.
I appreciate I appreciate what you're saying. I think the doubts that Obama had, were sort of the factor of being the first black president and the weight that comes with that and the weight of, like any conscientious human being going, when I say what I want to say, will it be heard like I want it to be heard? That is the crux of being an effective speaker, but it is also necessary if you are trying to be a genuine value to the human beings you are addressing or you are attempting to lead, right?
Sorry, we already have our winner.
Oh, right on. We have a winner. Who's our winner? Who do we have? Who was it? Just first name. That's all I need. So, who do we have who won it? What's the name and where are they, Antonio?
We are getting that information right now.
Okay, cool. Just all I need is their first name. I don't want to say their last name or whatever, but I want to congratulate them on air. That's really cool, though. Thanks, you guys, for calling in. And we have, I think, one other caller, but I'm going to let them pass because I'm getting, I understand we're having issues with the lines, so I don't want to run aground of that. So I appreciate them calling in. They can always join us in the chat room, which is sort of these days a bulletproof way of being able to get into the conversation, and I really appreciate that. Whenever I'm not in a rant, anyways. And by the way, you can always join us, and if you enjoy the show afterwards on my YouTube channel at howsparks.tv. You can come there and join in the chat there. We do a little post show after the fact, and it's always a great conversation, and we get to kind of go a little bit further. And obviously, we're not constrained by some of the linguistics of broadcast radio. We won't go as far as Samantha Bee's language quite, but occasionally we can venture into saucier territory. And thank you, Fesser Frank, in our chat room for your super chat. We really appreciate that. The HSRP effectively runs on super chat these days. I have not really caught on to the whole right-wing Patreon thing. There are people on Patreon who and if you're in a foreign country and you watch the show and you can't do super chat because you can't do it outside the country, that's Patreon is your other is your other option for kind of donating or helping out the show on a regular basis. It really keeps us afloat. And since we only do it once a week, it's kind of a negligible amount of money to everybody, but it really does go a long way towards making everything work, giving us the ability to, while we're traveling, we're getting a whole new setup for the audio so that everything will, we won't run into these issues. Yes, go ahead.
So we had a issue with the contest. We have to run it again because the winner that we got was not eligible for the tickets.
Oh no! Then I think the whoever. Well, we let the seventh caller go. I'm guessing because we didn't ask him. Okay.
Yes.
So everybody call back right now. So and I'm going to choose the fifth caller. The fifth caller because 5 is my lucky number.
Right. So, and Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana area, call right now.
Yeah. You have to be in that area to be eligible. If you have any questions about whether you're, in that area or whatever, you can go to contest tab at WCPT820.com, and we'll solve that. Good. Okay, so call in right now, 773-763-9278. You have another bite at the apple. Thank you, Rocky Mountain Mike. And for your super chat as well. Bless you. Thank you. And Amos in our chat was saying racism, sexism, and white regency is part of the issue. James Etling was sexism present, yes, but mind you, Sanders would not have run if Senator Warren entered the race. I don't know that that's true necessarily. And it's curious about what the caller was saying too about that the country was too racist for Obama, and if Hillary had gotten in there first, I arguably think, and I was sort of prepared for it myself, and you could see by the amount of sexism that was coming up and the rampant sexism that was coming up under what Trump was getting away with saying, then if Hillary had gotten into office right after Bush, I think we would have seen sexism attacks on the same level, and God only knows the amount of ridiculous Clinton conspiracies and the all the nonsense about the foundation and Pizzagate and all that kind of stuff that they threw up about Hillary, that I don't know that it would have been any different. They would have just thank you, Sixes, for that, for your donation of $6.66 to help us buy 666 Fifth Avenue. That is our continuing goal. There has to, I really do.
We have a winner.
Oh, right on. We have a winner. The fifth caller was who?
William from Chicago.
William from Chicago, who is, fantastic. Have a great time, William, and whoever you choose to take for your 2 VIP passes to Milwaukee Pride this weekend. That's fantastic. Okay, I'm so glad we could fix that, Antonio. You're awesome, and you can be my fill-in anytime. Wait, what? So there is a, we're not going to run out of, stuff to talk about each week as far as Trump and his, his nonsense, whether it's saying that, going to Texas to meet with the victims of gun violence and forcing them to meet him at the airport because he only left to go to a $5,000 a plate fundraiser. And this constant cutting away of just normalcy and quality of behavior that we see from Trump himself. And again, it's not because I'm squeamish, and it's not because I have issues with language. Quite frankly, I think I certainly believe that the pushback about Samantha Bee's language is phony. I think a lot of people in the Trump administration who pretend to be horrified by it are completely hypocritical about what they're saying. You will almost never, with the exception of things that are outright racism, and again, I don't consider what Roseanne said to be a joke. I consider it to be a racist simile, which is, was never intended to be funny. It was intended to be insulting. That when people are making jokes, and they really are jokes, I give you a wide berth. Make a mess. I don't really care if you're, if you're funny in what you're able to accomplish. That there's an area for that, but be ready for pushback, and understand that pushback is not a violation of your free speech rights. It's somebody else acting on theirs. Thank you so much, Tom. Oh, that's awesome. For the super chat. I appreciate all the super chatters. Stick around for the post show. Thank you so much. You guys enjoy. Dick K will be coming up next. Thank you, Antonio. Much love to Lady B for, we'll see you next week, and when Johnny's back with us, and it's so great that she's having her little baptism this weekend. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else, and have a great Pride Month. We'll see you next week. Go tell somebody. Whoa, Lord. You're absolutely right, Amos. I couldn't say that on the air, but yeah. Thanks so much, Antonio.
All right, Hal. Thank you for that. Sorry for all the hiccups.
That's okay. It's a wiring thing with the phones there. We just need another line to work that out, because it's really two lines are crisscrossed. Whatever's going to the tie line is both the radio feed and the news, and they're overlapped with each other somehow, and so they create a cycle loop. It just needs to be a mix minus, a dual mix minus that needs to be worked out. But that's Mike's business.
Having experienced it myself, I'll make sure to bring it up and make sure we get that squared away.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it, because it's been like the last 8 months or so. But yeah, thanks so much. Okay, bye.
Huh?
Bye. Cool. Yay. All right. Now we're signed off. Cool. All right. Had a great time at the live show last Saturday. I wish we could do more often. Chicago's great. Yeah, Natalie, that was so terrific. Thank you, Can't Stop Lying. Appreciate it. Lady B juggles so much. Antonio did well, considering that's right. Great show once again. Thank you, Robin. Absolutely. It's a raw deal. I actually won tickets, and your guy took them away for no reason. Oh, Kurt, you won the tickets? Are you not in the area? Why did you not get them? He said, are you not in the Chicagoland area? Is that what it is? Because I think that was the rule on it. Yeah, they're open to Chicago, North Indiana, and whatever the range of the station. Because I think other stations are giving away tickets. I apologize. Well, let's try and work that out. We'll figure out what we can do. That's weird. My apologies. Kurt's in California. Oh, I see. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, that's why I have to do all that boilerplate about make sure you qualify in check the contest tab. I apologize, but I'll maybe I can come stump for you or something. Make it up for you, if that would help. I always question that. I got 5 brothers, 3 sisters in Chicago. I could have gave them to another. I see. Yeah, sorry. All right. Brad, the guest he had on last night was awesome. Really put sharp edges on everything. And comment 2001 still looks great on Blu-ray. This is true. Happy 50th anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's a 70mm print touring the country. I really enjoyed you in the film. Thank you. Yeah. did some of my best early work 2 years before I was born. Let's see, I'm scrolling back through there. Whatever. Let me do this real quick. Create a highlight. Mm-hmm. Let's see. There we go. All right, I got the player time. Cool. Well, welcome to the post show. This is the after show for HSRPM. You can watch the whole show and all 3 hours of it, or however long we're on here for this next part. But if you don't want to, this will be available just as the post show element there, whatever. I don't know why I got an LA Times notification. Oh, whatever. So welcome to the show, and let's start working on sort of questions and what you guys might want to talk about. Winners have to pick up the tickets at the station. This is true. I could use a plug for my campaign. I have 3 days left to make it to the general. I'm on Twitter, Kurt for Congress, Act Blue, and GoFundMe. There you go. So, yeah, you guys, I'll let's see. Kurt for Congress. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Gotta open that up. Don't freeze on me, you jerk. That's always weird. Hopefully we're okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Let's go to Twitter and look up Kurt for Congress and see if we can do a little boost there. Search Twitter. There you go. Kurt Wilson. There he is. There you go. There you go. There you go. Okay, Kurt. So, I'm forwarding some of this. Let's see. There you go. Okay, there you go. I just retweeted 2 of your things, Kurt. There you go. Hopefully that helps. Get you started. It was interesting here in the talk about Obama saying he was 10 years ahead of his time, or maybe even 20, and after having after going through the stuff with Queer as Folk, like I feel like I get in working with everybody in the cast and the writers and all that. Like, that's kind of, I think, the general feeling that everybody working on QAF had, that it had, and so, that it was kind of like, it ended up being very pivotal for a lot of people, and yet at the same time, it gets forgotten in sort of the elements of history, or pushed back on. And so, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around, because it's like my experience of it day to day is I run into, lots of people daily that were positively affected by the show, or, and all that kind of stuff. But the general public, if you're trying to move them along, it had it was obviously ahead of its time, or it wouldn't have been as crucial or as important. And I think the Obama presidency is the same kind of circumstance, in that it required he was obviously, the country was not ready for its first black president when he was president, but the act of him being our first black president was a necessary step towards us getting there. I don't necessarily think we get there quicker if he isn't the first black president, if that makes sense. That it just keeps punting, and we could continue to lie to ourselves in the same way that I think, the first female president, will have that same kind of effect. Do I think she'll be treated with the kind of same vitriol that Obama experienced? Probably not. Do I think if she's a Democrat, will she? And there's no reason to believe she would be. If she's a Democrat, will the left be? Will they take a "we must hold her feet to the fire" attitude towards her, or would we just or just will people have learned their lesson from the Obama administration and be more supportive? It's hard to say. I'm not 100% trusting in any of these circumstances about this stuff, and that's why I think it's actually more important that you manage your citizenry, that your own citizenship. You take an active position, So I'm going back through reading your chats. It's hard to quantify groundbreaking in hindsight. Yeah, absolutely, Charles. It's really hard to grasp. I have a real hard time with Obama saying that. I don't think he's wrong in saying it. But here's the thing: being ahead of your time entails a lot of damage and pain, and you're out on. They call it out on a limb for a reason, because it's easy for it to crack and for you to fall. And Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, they were all ahead of their time and they died for it. Was the country ready for their message? No. That's why the message was necessary. Was the country ready for its first black president? No. That's why it was necessary. Hallen, you guys are more economical than a psychotherapist. Oh, yeah. That's right. Losing the vote by 3 million and winning the electoral college is not something that happens without interference. I would agree with that. I also think that just this, I won't ever, I don't know anybody who expects me to bend on this kind of, third-party nonsense or this butter emails crowd that would ever go, yeah, you just, she's probably going to win, so why bother voting? Like, no, you don't. You're responsible. You're a responsible adult. We're still one nation controlled by the media. I disagree. I think we hand over that control. I don't think we're controlled by anything. If we believe something, we choose. It's because we choose to believe it. If we don't act, it's not because the media drove us not to act. It's because we didn't act. And in those circumstances, even when there's tons of evidence to support a conclusion, the idea that you would say, well, it's system's bigger than I are responsible. Like I just can't go there in my life. Abdicating personal responsibility is not in my bloodstream. Where did I get that cool Chicago shirt you wore last week? Oh, I got it in the Hancock Tower. We went up to the Hancock Tower and they were selling it in the lobby there. It was just really cool. Tom, America was built on racism, had a constitution based on racism, fought a war of racism against itself, kept from racism, so we can't be surprised when racism raised its ugly head again. Partly true, Billy, but you also had a country that, half the country was fighting on the side of abolitionism. The 2/3, or 3/5, whatever, that was a mitigatory balance between the people who did believe in full humanity. For both natives and were anti-slavery. You don't have a civil war unless you have people who are willing to take up arms to end slavery. I think America isn't necessarily built on racism the way it has been at the forefront of dealing with the world's racism. And we're the battlefield for a lot of it, because in a lot of other countries it just still exists. So I don't necessarily think we're built on racism. I don't necessarily buy that, and I think we are only that when we abdicate our responsibility and are standing up to racism, and going, well, we're fine now, or things are okay now, or whatever. So if Trump got in, what's the da-da? No, you don't give that ground. And if you have actually, I'm just saying there's a value. Whatever your belief system is, if it leads you to not being motivated to make the country better or live up to its standards, then it's a useless ideology. If ultimately it does make you push towards making us a more inclusive society, then it matters not. How does it mean that we have to be vigilant and vociferous in the fight against this stuff? Yeah, I agree. But here's the thing. That's the problem with writing it off as a racist country, or racist to the core, or systemically racist, and using terms like that. Because what ultimately happens is you make the racists feel like they own more ground than they do. This is the argument about why radical Islamic terrorism, or saying all Muslims and that kind of thing. That once you do that, if you let ISIS take credit for every bomber or shooter that exists, then ISIS seems to be bigger than they are, and their mandate grows inexorably based on that belief system. But if you go, no, actually, racist, you're a lonely person. The majority of people don't agree with you. Most people in that Starbucks were horrified at how those guys were treated, and the woman behind the counter was alone in her behavior. And I think it is, that is the reality. And if you say, well, everybody's racist and they're just carrying their racism around all the time, what you do is that's not a politically inert statement, and it certainly doesn't win hearts and minds or make people feel like you're the person to talk to or engage with on a political level. Because if you're trying to win them over to your political ideology, what you're effectively saying is you're not welcome. And the only way we gain ground is that if there is, you guys know this. I mean, I talk about this all the time. That's why I don't, in my stand-up act, I don't buy homophobia or Islamophobia or because it's not an illness. These people are bigots. Call them bigots. If some things aren't offensive, they're bigoted. They're prejudiced. Call them that. Because if you just make something phobic, then anybody who's weirded out by any random stranger suddenly falls into the category of they're on Team Ku Klux Klan. And then the Klan goes, see, look how many people are in my camp. And when half those people are like, I'm not in that guy's camp. You made it look like I am, but I'm not. Hal has closed down the show for an hour to have a discussion about race. Yeah, it's kind of true. But I think it's important. Yo momophobia, it's the worst kind, Billy. It is. Let's see. When you have 60 million people voting for Trump, that's a sizable number, and the racism of Donald Trump is already hard to miss unless you just wanted to. No question. But again, Hillary won the popular vote, and this is if it's just America is, then you just deny the existence of all the people who voted against him with a lot of concern and deference in their heart. I don't believe that how the white racist reaction is a daily reality in the U.S. Chris Hayes, Joey did a show on MSNBC. Yeah, but I know it's a daily reality. That doesn't mean that that the rest of the country is okay with that. I went to farmers market, and the registered voters, we were met with polite ambivalence. Do you have any advice for us? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think keep at it, because that's going to be the response for a lot of people, and because people are walking around with a lot on their minds and all that kind of stuff, and is persistence. That's always got to be. I'm not hopeless here in Georgia. We ignore Klan marches when they occur, and they stopped here. Yeah. The Electoral College has got to go. I agree with that. I think that's just a land ownership-based form of electoral politics. America will never reach its true potential for everyone until white Americans accept the racism of the past and admit to the privileges it's given them. Brutal but true. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know. Well, I don't know that they'll ever, that there's this kind of mass idea of recognition of privilege that will actually move past that point. Because I think actually a bunch of people, you could begrudgingly get them to admit that privilege, and then that would just make them resentful from that point on, even though they'd admitted it. I don't trust that when people are say things in an obligatory sense, or to make you feel or anybody feel that they understand something when they really don't feel it in their hearts, that's a movement forward. Do I think they, that that voice is important, that idea is important? Absolutely. I'm just always reticent when anybody is in a situation where there's a rule about what they should say or admit to be part of a club or whatever, like to allow to be led into a conversation or trusted. It's just weird. It's it's as much non-whites being disadvantaged as much as Caucasians being privileged. I would say more so. Structural racism is probably worse and harder to undo than individual racism. I don't know how you don't link those together. And Amos, they expect us to comment on Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson's latest remark, but ask about Trumpism, and they suddenly have something else to do. Right. It's as much, yeah. Get rid of the electoral college and then implement ranked choice voting. Yeah, I think that's an absolute, absolutely would help. Yeah. I think the state-by-state efforts to mandate that their electoral college votes will be based on percentage of popular vote is a good start. Rocky Mountain Mike, I actually think that is the game changer of all this stuff because, obviously, primarily the lawsuits that have been filed to fix gerrymandering in a lot of areas, which is, a very specific way that Republicans try to manage the vote of everyone in the country, being more inclusive. That they are literally trying to downplay the voters being more socially open, and that literally the racists are trying to curtail the people in this country who outnumber them, who aren't racist, from actually having their voice heard. Otherwise, the gerrymandering wouldn't be necessary. Election day should either be a weekend or a holiday. I think it should be a national holiday. I think that's absolutely the case. It should be a mandatory bank holiday. No question. I also think that you should be able to vote at any post office, in every region, at your local polling place, or any state office for no matter what, for the week before Election Day. And then polling places would get an updated, this person already voted. That you could check online, the day before or whatever, to make sure nobody's taking your vote away. But that if you went to a post office or a federal building or any or a friggin' police station, and you voted at any of those places, that would show up on the list as you already voted. We have postal votes if you'll be away on Election Day, and polls are open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Yeah, it's mail-in voting or being absentee is often one of the ways to handle a lot of this stuff. But that has to be going forward. But again, if people aren't voting, every one of these conversations are ultimately meaningless because for two reasons. One, you're not affecting your political voice in any material sense. And secondly, the people who are elected to office know they can't count on you. So that you're like, why don't they listen to their constituency? Because their constituency doesn't vote. And the ones, thank you, Robert. That's really awesome. Needs more cowbell. I need more cowbell. That's hilarious. California vote for Dr. Maitran for Congress. Right on. I vote on paper, mail it in, as do I, actually. We have boxes where you can drop off and lots of other ways to vote, yeah. Anywhere you can get your passport application photos, you should be able to vote. Post office is a winner. I agree. I mean, we should be able to vote at any location where we get Soylent Green. Soylent Green is of Omaha is people you can chomp on when the going's rough. Mandatory voting should be mandatory. Yeah, I understand where you're going there. I do think the problem with mandatory voting is essentially that we are a country, we're a free country. So mandating behavior is antithetical to the very constitutional concept that we have. So forcing somebody to vote is, that's difficult. I would say that you should have certain benefits limited if you don't vote. So if you don't vote, you don't get to use the DMV, for example. Like you don't get to use, you can't make an appointment for the DMV, or any of the things that are shortcuts, so that you're not being forced to pay something secondarily on top of not voting. But if you don't vote, all the benefits of voting should, all the extra benefits of voting should be denied you, if that makes sense. Can mandate you vote, but give the option of no contest. You don't have to choose one. Yeah, I mean, I think that's yeah, no confidence. Yeah, I guess so. It baffles me that we don't have a holiday for voting. That's just stupid. I completely agree. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about 4th of July, like as an Independence Day, if we're going to talk about having what makes our country special is a peaceful exchange of power because we get to vote on our leaders, then we have President's Day, we have all these things, but we don't have the actual day. I mean, that'll be my first act as president. Is we're going to declare, we're going to, by, the executive order, it we will make the day of voting day will be a national holiday. And we'll remove President's Day and move it to that day. So we'll no longer take President's Day off, but you'll celebrate President's Day by voting on your voting day. How about that? Celebrate the president, celebrate the our independence and our ability to determine our own political work, but you're not going to have a day off to actually activate those thought forms. After the new Democratic majority comes in, we should be able to vote on Stormy Daniels Day. By the way, all these federal holidays, and most people complain about not getting Christmas or Thanksgiving off. Yeah. As president, go hell. Thank you. All the states change the election years for their governors' errors so they won't be affected by the presidential election. Oh, yeah, all the states change their election years for their governors so they won't be affected by the presidential election. You're right. Yeah. Let's see. I'm reading through everybody. So, required instant runoff. Yeah. How all we need is Bill Pullman to yell into a microphone, "It's our voting day," right? I think it's just super important. And that's nice, Sandra, that you took a vacation day to work at the poll on Tuesday. That's exactly the kind of engagement I was talking about, where it goes beyond simply voting, and this is the same argument for, if you're talking about volunteerism, There's so many people like the right wing is all about like, it's not the place of the government to take care of starving kids. That's charities and churches. Like, do you do anything yourself? No. They don't engage in any of that charity work. They just think, well, somebody else will do it. And this is not, this is a common human behavior. I just think we have a responsibility to put put our money where our mouth is. Let the go where the rubber hits the road, whatever your analogy is, but to actually be engaged. Have an enjoyable breakfast, Carl. That sounds lovely. More voting day. Voting in November is voter suppression in the northern tier. Trump's first runoff was in a Moscow hotel suite. Trump is a terrible result of the gradual shift of the center more rightward over the years. Mary Dixon will be a dangerous time if that happens. I think really the center of the country socially is actually moved left, which I think is indicative of the popular vote. And you could argue that some of that shift has been so drastically left that some of those people left the reservation and Bernie broed their way to not voting for Hillary. They Jimmy Dored their vote, and said, well, America deserves it. If this is my choices, if it's Hillary or Donald Trump, then America deserves whatever's coming to it. Knowing full well, quite frankly, that a lot of them, being white and privileged, that they wouldn't be on the receiving end of these ICE raids. In 2012, I tapped into an interview with a former Grand Dragon of KKK, and he boasted how he was grooming men with Germanic roots to infiltrate government and change it from the inside out. Kurt, we talked about during the Iraq War when the government had a real problem with right-wingers and like neo-Nazis effectively trying to join the military and use the training there for the Great Day of the Rope, their big dream race riot, their race war that they was eventually going to come, and they started brooming those guys. Some of them they broomed outright. Some of them they tried to do on the down low, hoping nobody would notice that they took them in, and then ultimately those guys ended up joining police forces, and then we're wondering why they start behaving, in the way that they are. So, my question was that if Trump declares voter fraud, if he stays in office and loses next time, can he declare a police state military coup? I would doubt it. I think that a lot of the Republican, Army training is part of their MO. That's true. I think a lot of the Republicans, even those who would consider themselves supporters of him, like that would be the sort of last straw for them, because a lot of them are, they're pigs, but they're, and they'll feed at the trough as long as it's sitting in front of them. But a lot of them are, it's the difference between somebody who will, there are a lot of people who are comfortable sort of BSing or conning somebody out of money in a business deal that is unethical and illegal on some fronts. But there's a difference between that and armed robbery, and it's a line they won't cross, and I do believe that there's a bunch of those folks. I think there's some that would absolutely do it because they're religious maniacs who believe that, if Trump stays in office, he can declare himself God in the Temple on the Mount, and Jesus will come back and get rid of all those pesky Jews, that kind of stuff. Like the really crazy right-wing televangelist style, stuff. Like those guys, I'm sure they of course exist. They exist everywhere. So is there an echo in here? Continue to listen as I drive to Mandalay Bay to visit a friend from California. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Summer's working all weekend at so she's all caught up. So if you're listening, babe, hi. Yeah. So have fun, Natalie. Let's see. Scrolling back. You guys are so great. And here's the thing, and this, I run into this all the time, is, conceptually, and this, I'd love to hear from your guys' opinions about this, because I have, my if I have a single issue, it's fairness, and honesty. That these two things, I'm kind of always like, I get bristly when things are sort of overtly untrue. Oh, hi, Ginger. Look at you. How are you? Thank you so much. That I, when things are, blatantly dishonest and blatantly unfair, I bristle about that stuff, even when we're the ones doing it. Especially, I would think, actually, I get more upset about it when we do it from the left, because I feel like that's the part we can control. Like, I've never felt like you can control other people or what they're going to do. You can kind of try to motivate them, but you can't actually get them to do it, right? You can't actually, you can't count on other people to change, right? You can only change yourself, and so when we're disingenuous or unfair or any of that stuff, like, I find myself bristling about it, and but sometimes I don't speak up about it necessarily as vociferously as I want, because there's this perception that if you question the methodology, you're questioning the cause itself, and that's a tough that's a tough one to deal with in sort of modern the modern politic, so yeah. Anyways, that kind of bounces around a lot in my head when I'm watching stuff on the news and how the stuff is drafted, because I also think that when people if you it's like the crying wolf concept, or if you call out, if you make all affronts equal, then it undermines the when you really have an issue. It really makes it hard to argue if you elevate small affronts to the level of high affronts. It doesn't make the small affronts bigger and more, people. It doesn't make people understand the impact of the small ones. It diminishes the big ones. If that makes any sense. So. Yeah, the prosperity doctrine. You're talking about that dude who's in, who is asking for his fourth Learjet or whatever, and then of course the Joel Osteen crowd. A lot of them are looking at the stock market and saying it works, Lord, it works. And as they have, as those folks get more spending money, there's a lot of people sending a little bit of money all the time to those folks. And I am who I am, and you guys are immensely helpful in keeping the show on the air and making it possible just through your super chats. I mean, that's where it goes. And can you imagine if I was promising everlasting life, and you guys were a little soft in the head? That it's amazing how these guys can bilk people. Well, Amos, the guy said if Jesus came back, he wouldn't be riding a donkey; he'd have a jet. A, those guys really believe that, and B, that was the mistake Judas made, right? I'm not. Yeah, I kind of might be, Ginger. Now that I think about it, that Judas believed that when Jesus finally rose up and was king, he would have an army and material power upon the earth, and he would sit on a gold throne and the whole deal. And then when he didn't, he was like, I'll hedge my bets. I'll try and or not hedge my bets. I'll like kind of provoke this into happening, right? And so by doing that, sorry, I have something in my eye. It's really itchy. By doing this, by telling the Romans, that this is the guy and pointing him out, when they come to get him, he's going to have to rise up and show them his true power. And then when they came and got him, and instead of Peter lopped the guy's ear off and Jesus put it back on, was the story, and they took Jesus away anyways, that's why Judas hung himself, because he thought his plan didn't work out. He thought he was doing the right thing, right? But he believed that there would be this, will we be able to fund a $50 more million jet for you, Hal? Jesse Duplantis might not need it much longer. I don't need the big 50 more. I'd rather just have the Cirrus SR-22. It's a prop plane, so it's much cheaper. I think it's maybe $700K. I don't need, in my prosperity doctrine, I don't need come on, guys. Very sweet. Hallelujah. That's right. Actually, that's the second coming when he's on the throne. Never promised that for the first coming. I know that, Billy, but the idea was that Judas believed Jesus. He was from a militant. It was like a Sicarii Jew, and believed that that he would have a kingdom on earth the first time, no matter what he said. And so the idea was that he was in. And again, I mean, you talk about the nature of that prophecy. If somebody doesn't turn him in and he doesn't get crucified, there is no prophecy and nothing happens. So Judas ends up becoming the most important person, right? This is, I don't know. Anyways, you can argue kind of the logistics of that. Is that I always thought it was funny when I was a kid and I was in church that they were so mad at Judas, and I was like, yeah, if there's no Judas, there's no prophecy, there's no crucifixion, there's no nothing. So somebody had to do it. So arguably, he's the more important one, right? So that's the key part. Funny how money tends to pervert one, isn't it? I don't know. It depends on what kind of perverted stuff you're using your money for, Ginger. Oh my goodness. But I think ultimately the idea was that the money that Judas took was a sham. That he took it to make the Romans feel like he was on their side, so they wouldn't just roll up and slaughter everybody. That this would be an exchange, and it would be I'll take your money, but I'll deliver him peacefully. You just have to promise to jail him and don't kill the rest of the guys, and da-da-da-da. Jesus wants you to be filthy rich because he's all about the bling. This is true, Amos, and I've always felt that, Little known secrets, Jesus did come back, but bloody Gina waterboarded him to death under orders from the CIA, right? Hal, I've actually thought that about Judas, too. Yeah. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Right. Well, that's the idea of like why offer anything in exchange for prayer. That's why when in theory that thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God is part and parcel to when you pray, don't offer behavior in its exchange. Simply be faithful. Otherwise, you're trying to bargain. You can't make God do anything. The argument is in prayer you could convince God of your sincerity. Of a desire, and desire literally means from the Father. Desire, those which you are sired from, right? So all desires are a prayer. Is that idea? You can buy Trump stuff at fire sale prices soon. This is true. At the end, those Jewish leaders had no king but Caesar, and Caesar ever show them? And did Caesar ever show them who was boss? This is true. What would Jesus do? Jesus is all about the bling. Thou can't make the Lord do parlor tricks. I don't know, the fish and the walking on water and stuff, like he was straight up Chris Angeling himself across. Christ Angel was putting on quite a show back then. You guys have some big icons. How did that? I think my emojis are very tiny. I don't know why that is. It's all about faith. You imagine the smudging that will be necessary after these administration leaves. Oh my God, yeah, you have to walk through the whole White House with just like someone like literally covered in a sage Geely suit on fire running through the place. Ginger, getting ready to read your book, Dirty Little Secrets, while I'm off for the summer. Look at that, selling some books. Way to go, Ginger. say enjoy, but not. That might not be the book for that. How are you saying yours is smaller than ours? I have no. Yes, I'm saying that specifically, Billy. Even my Trumper dad won't wear Trump stuff. Yeah, I what was your DNA again? I'm more Scottish than anything else. Native, and then of course I'm 14% sub-Saharan African, which was really a curious find. And the weird thing is, there's that ad with that woman. You've probably seen it. It's a really nice ad. It's kind of a tearjerker with the woman who's there's this female tribe leader, and she's like, I'm wondering where I got my strength from, yada yada, as if only the women in a family line only get their strength from the women in their family line, which is really wonky. Like, I don't understand. Like, what? But okay, what? I mean, you can inspire it anyways. So I suppose being inspired is one thing, but like you don't genetically have a predisposition to strength because your grandmother was, or what? We may be related. That I would consider you a brother anyways, Carl. So there you go. But yeah, so anyways, it's a black lady. She's really beautiful. They show her wheel come up, and I'm like, she's like 50% English and Irish, and I'm more African than she is. What? I thought that was the weirdest part of that ad, because I'm like 14% and she's like 13%. I'm like, how is it that I have 1% more than this lady and they're showing this, tribe from back. It's like so funny. Okay. 25% Lebanese in the DNA test couldn't find in my sister. I won't do it. Oh. Yeah, some of them aren't fully, actualized yet. I wouldn't doubt if people took theirs again in like 10 years, it's very different because they're getting bigger and bigger sample sizes. And so I think it'll probably bifurcate even smaller over time. So like these big swaths where people have an entire chunks this or whatever, like it'll get smaller and smaller as they go, oh, it's this tribe and this group and I do have a lot less Cro-Magnon. I have less Cro-Magnon DNA than something like 60-70% of the populace, which is interesting. I have a lot less, and clearly there's no formative brow ridge, that might indicate a more Neanderthal background, right? That's right. I'm 1.3% sub-Saharan African. Who knows where that came from? Oh, it's an industry-wide problem. No Middle Eastern DNA to compare with. Yeah, I think there's entire swaths they've left out too. So, very few people in Africa who spared $99 for DNA testing. So not lots of data from there. Although they do have a lot of African testing because of the amount of diseases that people have fought. Hey, it's Julie. Look at that. Hey, welcome, Julie. Look at that. Hi. We're just talking about our DNA. Became like a post show about that. And my Lebanese ancestors, Phoenicians, yeah, they went there. They went everywhere. Yes, this is true. I just watched this documentary about Neanderthals, and them basically being the Northern Europe Homo sapiens, equivalent. And then the Homo sapiens moving up from Africa was the original theory, anyways, the out of Africa theory, which has kind of fallen apart in the last few years. But I mean, there's still a large swath of human beings that came out of there, so they mated with Neanderthals and other groups. And there was the prevailing storyline was that the Neanderthals died as a result of the spread of Homo sapiens. And that the idea was that Homo sapiens effectively killed them all, and therefore they were the failed genetic species in a Darwin-esque kind of way. But if a good chunk of humans actually have Neanderthal DNA, and then I think it was just the mixing and the soft selection over time of more sapien-like traits. because it was quite a long period. 52% Ivory Coast. Nice. I've got a babysitter for this week for when I go to lodge for masonry. I needed one, and it's hard to find somebody that Camden likes. So there you go. Got hummus. What? Julie killers are failing of military members. That collective as voters, we keep on electing presidents who misuse the military for necessary wars and conflicts. This is true. 50% Ivory Coast, Nigerian, Ghana, 48% Scandinavian, Great Britain, Germanic. Well, you're a mix, aren't you? And especially 41% Europe, South, 30% Great Britain, and 5% English and Wales. Yeah, I can see that with your Sicilian background. And I'm hoping to have some latent mutant DNA. I think that's in my mixed gunk because I had like 9% of like, I have no idea. Like, there was this huge chunk of like, really, we don't know. You might be from space. The slave master did. Not sure why Great Britain and Ireland, Scotland, Wales are divided up. Well, because they're different people. Camden Sparks for president. This is true. Dumpy has orangutan DNA. Need to get 23andMe kit at some point. Were you guys saying last time that like 23andMe or which one is it? Them or Ancestry is Mormon or something? Is a Mormon company? Not that that matters because they just it'll either be true or it isn't. But that could mean that they're like baptizing everybody's sample and making you everyone's Mormon by the time we're done. You know, because they were remember when they were posthumously baptizing dead people. It was Ancestry? Okay. I mean, Great Britain and the other countries are two separate categories. Yeah, well, if you look at, like, Scottish redheads, like fiery redheads and gingers, there's a physical genetic difference, That's what they're doing, Hal? Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. LDS is keeping track of everyone. I try to be on the cutting edge of it. Yeah. Oh, and thanks, Brad, for the jet. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, so we need to. Well, first of all, I've got to finish my flying lessons. So that that'll be that'll be over the summer. Hopefully, if the weather evens out. Mormons baptize mitochondrial Eve, and boom, everyone's Mormon, right? That's why the only reason that they are looking for like the fossilized body of a woman with no belly button. I might wake up dead with my own planet. That'd be cool. 1/3 Oompa Loompa. Sure. Well, that's pretty sweet. You get nothing. Good day, sir. As someone who's green-eyed redhead, I've come to terms that I'm a mutant. I've made peace with this. This is true. Working theory is mutant DNA is a virus. All right, sure. Why not? That'll be on my headstone. I'm not Mormon. They better spell it right. Because I'm not moron wouldn't really sell the point. They leave the second M out. Mitochondrial Eve was the Big Bang. All right, easy. Actually, Lilith was. This crazy ancestry shows Ireland, Scotland, Wales includes Nova Scotia. Well, the background of Sparks, Carl, and by the way, probably why I get a little uptight about abolitionists not getting their due is that the Sparks family was known as abolitionists, and even the Sparks family that was in, I want to say, Louisiana ages ago, were slave owners, became abolitionists, gave their slaves their freedom, and that's why a lot of black people have the name Sparks, because they took the name when they moved north to remind people that they were freed by this family in the South, right? So this is the it was Alabama then, I think. You're right. And so the abolitionists themselves, are playing as important a part in the story as the people who were fighting to keep, slavery there. I think it's super important to look at that movement and honor it. That being said, the Sparks family from that side, which is where we borrowed our name, came from Northern Europe and was Sparker, Sparkr, and was literally like literally a group of people known for their personality. Now, later on, though, the Sparks clan that I actually get my name from, and probably where it kind of derived from, was that my family tree, the lineage where my name comes from, was Sparrowhawk, because we were hawkers for the king, and the king and I guess somebody in my long family line saved the king's life 3 times. And so if you look at the Sparks seal from Scotland and England, it starts with a little shield with a boreal kind of like trees and squares, right? And then eventually it had a lion on top of it, and then the lion, after a few years, his first paw is up, then his second paw comes up, and then he's breathing fire, and he's on top of a shield, not a shield, a knight's helmet. And the reason is because he saved the king's life 3 times. And so at each time they kind of added a little affectation of how tough this dude was. But he was a hawker, and he used sparrowhawks. And the king of that symbol is actually a Jesus Christ symbol that's famous, but it looks like HS. So I printed it out because I was like, that's really interesting. It's literally a Christian symbol for an Old English way of saying Christ's name, but it looks like a carving of HS. So anyways, I printed it out because it interested me. So but the king liked the Hawks. I gotta see if I've got a copy of the thing itself. And my family's logo name is whatever the motto of the family is. Yeah, it's the HIS papal seal. That's right. In hoc sanctum. There you go. Is Celere Veris, which is swift and true. So the swift and true, because the king thought the sparrowhawks were the swift and true. They were the best hawks for hunting. And so the Sparrowhawk clan eventually became the Sparks group over time. Sparks, Sparrowhawk, Sparks, like it broke down like that, as language does over time. So there you go. How about the star in your signature? That's just straight up witchcraft. I could have saved a lot of money. Always remember that Mitt Romney has a lot of Catholic ancestors in his woodpile. Right. Lilith was the independent chick that Adam complained to God about. That's right, Robin. That's why it's where Lilith Fair gets its name. Yeah, Sparrowhawk becomes Sparks. That's right. The way ancestry delineates Great Britain includes Brittany, Normandy, and the Netherlands. That's right. And Sparker, which is spelled like this, is the Netherlands Norwegian kind of way of doing it. Oh, I got my patch, Hal. Not sure how to stitch rubber, but whatever. There's a groove in it, and just take it to a dry cleaners that does any kind of stitching or whatever, and just have them sew right in the groove in between the symbol and the outer frame. That's what it's for. Yeah. Not so Sparks, not like the stars. Yeah, well, it is because of me now. You know. So yeah, I love I love money, the evangelical symbol for Jesus. That's right. Hey man, he was all about abundance, right? Turned to a fish and a couple loaves of bread into enough for everybody. Thought it was the Michael Schenker Group logo. It is very close to that, I will say. I wouldn't doubt that that's partly where they got it from. Sparkle, right? Bad Amos, bad. How's Mr. Sparkler? Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so that's sort of the root of it. I want to say I printed it. Did I print it and put it up there? Is that behind me? No. Mason stuff. Yeah, I took it down. I think it's in the other room. But yeah, so that's the trick. There you go. Water into gold. I'm scared to do ancestry.com. I swear I'm not. Looks left, looks right. I'm really not paranoid. Hey, you know what's funny? I have to say, like, being I'm going on my I'm in my 18th year of being famous, of being publicly an awarity, of being known as I go out and about, being aware of my existence in terms of other people spot me, right? Which up until 2000, essentially 1999, in my life I was not. I mean, I was known for some stuff, and I would be famous in certain circles, or people would come see a show and they would know me from that right afterwards. But there's a big difference from that, like, people you have not seen live at a show or whatever, knowing you from television and other stuff like that. And it's an extraordinary thing. It's a curious experience, no doubt. Yeah, that's right, from Talk Soup, in the initial kind of break from that. And so doing things like, getting fingerprinted for my TSA number and, my TSA pre or global entry, or, doing a DNA thing or whatever, because I don't really have the option of anonymity anymore. Not that I'm really looking for it, because I like people, so whatever. It's totally cool. Maybe male celebrities are in a bit less danger from obsessed fans than male famous people. You mean female? No, not per se. And it was the woman, the person who broke into Sharon Gless's house with a gun was a woman. I don't know. Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, everybody has their stuff to watch out for. You can't know, what. But anyways, I have this. I've had some run-ins that were pretty heavy duty. So it's something you have to be aware of or whatever. But either way, I realize that I don't have the option of anonymity the way people do, and I never will again. Not really. Well done, Jay Totine. There you go. I even worry about her being just Mary in Ann Arbor on Steph's show. Who would Jesus deport? Yeah. It depends. I mean, is it one of those give unto Caesar what is Caesar's idea? Hard to say. It depends on their interpretation of it. And I bet there's somebody out there who's willing to interpret it exactly that way. Trying to look like I look on my FB Mary in Ann Arbor page. Right. Jesus just inspired everyone to share the food that they brought. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good argument, W. Absolutely. Although I have seen what I would consider miraculous things and experienced miraculous things in my life that are just impossible, and if you want to argue, mass complexity argument that everything's mathematical and therefore everything's potential, so therefore nothing's miraculous or whatever, like, I don't buy it. Do I have a lot of obsessive fans? I have some, yeah, I can say that. You might, Hal, but that would mean that your career ended and you returned to obscurity. Hope that never happens. Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. And interestingly enough, Tom, the stuff I have done, even in my short time of being known, has been very specifically effective. I don't know why I'm wearing these anymore because I'm not taking calls. I'm wearing my earrings right now, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. I feel like if, even if I decided to sort of quasi-retire, the kind of stuff I do would, thankfully, draw still draw attention from people that I feel like my career has helped or elevated or entertained in a very specific way than if I was just kind of on a random sitcom. Oh yeah, Nicola, these are just the people who are, you guys are just, that's just the number of the people who are in the chat. That doesn't count the people who are, who just watch or watch later, right? And I see you. Sorry, you won't. You need to be busy. No, I obviously won't. So I have no intention of doing that. And many of you know that my goal is to be the old guy in the movie. My goal. In all fairness, I don't see the craziness I used to. Hal's learned some hard lessons. Yeah, you can say that. Yeah. I kind of miss the craziness. I won't lie, but I'm also as a father and as somebody in a relationship and as somebody who also is in the case of some of my co-stars, I've had to recognize that I'm running interference for them too. Can't wait for you to have gray hair. I have some. It's just not enough to be meaningful yet. It'll be cool. Love your vocal cords. Well, thank you. Oh, are you saying that to Mary? All right. Can't be crazy once you become a parent. People do it all the time. I just choose not to. I'm going to keep it here. Thank you. It's technically dark brown. It just looks black because of my contrast of my cameras is all weird. It's the same thing that makes my skin look kind of orange. Or not. It's like kind of reddish pink. But whatever. No, Julie, no gray hair forever. You can, but likely you won't be a good parent. This is true. Hal, the future George Burns. Yeah, I kind of see myself as a future Burgess Meredith. Know what I mean? Like, that's my goal. You look good as a blonde in that tweet. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Gotta go. Hal, going to a concert tonight that includes some metal. Very nice. Have fun, Seattle Suzuki. That's what I say about my hair. Right. Our time here with Hal is the best part of the... Oh, thanks, Mary. That's awesome. I think Bob Barker quit dyeing his hair because of animal byproducts. This is true, but I don't know what kind of mink blood he was using to do his hair. But obviously times have changed. Yeah. Like, I'll be daddy cool, right? What, Seattle Suzuki, what metal are you gonna show? How does it include some metal? Your goal is to look like the Penguin? Yeah, that's right. No, my goal is to look like Rocky's trainer when I'm old. Speaking of metal, check out Frog Leap's metal version of Toto's Africa on the Frog Leap YouTube channel. I've seen that. It's cool. Can always find more vegan-friendly hair dye. Yes, this is true. Hal brings the cool to whatever he does. Comedian, magician, dad. It's all there. This is true. I try. Do you like Dwight Oakham and Steve Earle? Not really. I mean, I like Dwight as an actor. But, yeah. I just, I can't do modern country. Even the more, and I considered him solid. But just not what I do. It's just not my thing. I mean, if I listen to anything country-ish, it's straight up bluegrass. Eastern House School's Dad on the Block. I try. I really do. It's, I have to say, it's, after what I've been through kind of, with my kind of arrangement with, having my son and not being in a relationship with his mom and all that kind of stuff, and what it entails going through, and knowing that to some degree, as tough as my experience was, and it was tough, I was in the protected class, even because I'm known, because I'm famous. And so I think if I'd really decided to raise hell about the circumstance of just trying to deal with the system as it is, it would have had impact. And so I think I was treated with, and I have to say, like, not to get too much into it because I don't want to badmouth anybody in the process, but the judges I had were very were respectful people. They had their own prejudices and their own preconceived notions, and ultimately you could see them kind of pushing back against them when they're, in that process. But I definitely have like when dads aren't getting their due in society and in how we talk about them, that definitely gets my gander up. So, it's one of those things like, call your dad. Call your dad. Tell him you love him. Your dad tried hard too. I mean, and again, it just kind of goes to that whole idea of, there's a certain number of monsters that have allowed, that have erased the valiant and important fatherhood that exists, Wow, you guys got quiet all of a sudden. You must have touched a nerve. But, I don't think that gets said enough. Burgess Meredith, huh? Well, let me hear you say, Rock, you gotta eat lightning. You're gonna crep thunder. That's him spitting out orange seeds. My dad's dead. Well, I obviously then pay respect to an uncle or a dad, that you have in your family, who's there. Yeah, Father's Day's around the corner. We'll do maybe Cam and I will hop on and do a little live stream Father's Day moment. The impact of a dad is critical. I lost mine when I was 11. I can't even begin to express how my life changed because of this. Yeah. Like I love my dad, and my dad has, he's getting some age-related health problems that are very concerning. And I know it wears on him, and having a grandson has really, invigorated him, and seeing him take Camden, fishing or, out for a walk together to look at some deer or whatever is just, it's a glorious thing. It is just beautiful. I will fight for kids to have access to their dads if that dad gives a damn and wants to actually father their kid. Absolutely. I know that to be a fact, Ginger, and I love you for it, so thank you. Oh, that's awesome, Professor Frank. Lost my dad in 85. I'm sorry to hear that, Amos. And women who play fast and loose with dads because the courts favor them hurt their kids more than they know. This is true. You can't, I do feel like, from the rhetoric I hear, we kind of, we just don't give dads, attention. They've very much taken for granted in that regard. It's the one thing I hate: parents playing divorce tennis with their kids. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, Robin. Yeah, and my girlfriend Summer lost her father. He died really young, and I know how that not having that there is, and Julie lost her father last year. Or has it been 1 year, 2 years already? Almost 1 year? Yeah. I lose track of the time because I have no concept in this weird Trump world. It's just been a year, right, Julie? It's, it's just meaningful. Like, and there's this weird, almost zero-sum attitude we have that if you care about, thank you, Julie. I'm sorry, I'm like brain frying on that because I look back at the time because it seems like so much time has passed in the last year. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Carl. That there seems to be this idea that if you value your mom, you don't value your dad. Like, if you value your dad, you don't value your mom, or something like that. Like, your parents somehow are, like, not loving both of your parents is like at the expense of the other. And this is probably part of our divorce mentality. That there's been some sort of hedging of one against the other, and kind of how we look at things, this kind of Kramer versus Kramer concept, And thank you, Julie. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Kurt. So, I think, how they express, we've kind of grown up with this idea that you got to pick one, and you don't. Both of them have a value in your life that's different, and both of the lessons are different, and both the experiences are different, and I think they're intrinsically different. And you're right, Ginger. People feel like they have to take a side. Or the horse rescue place where I once volunteered, put down animals, and roadkill are rendered for dead here. Huh? That's not surprising at all. Robin, he was in good shape other than the heart and was able to have less invasive surgery and had a good surgeon. That's good to know. Man, Kevin Smith's story about his heart attack is just brutal. Whew. What do you guys think of me toying with real estate this month? I don't know. Go for it. Don't toy with it. Make it a job. Do it. But anyways, so, like, before I get too teary-eyed about it, like, this is, that's the one thing I think I've gotten a view of in the last few years that I couldn't have been aware of beforehand, Yeah, you don't have to be a fan of Kevin Smith to not want a guy who basically just makes his living making silly movies and talking about comic books to not have a massive heart attack. I don't have the best relationship with my father, but when we play together, I forget everything. Play violin, he's so controlled. That's interesting. You play violin. So, My father died when she was 13. Sadly, he smoked himself to death. My dad smoked when I was a kid, and I started charging him $0.25 for every cigarette I saw him smoke. By the time I graduated high school, he owed me $7,000. Never paid me, though. EO, are you buying 666 Fifth Avenue? Yeah. EO, you have to be the 666 Fifth Avenue real estate agent for us. That's great. Please be fair, I'm not real wild of him either, but I do share his worship of Batman. I believe that as women, our fathers have a big impact on who we become, and that's it. And as I said that to someone who didn't have a father, and she felt so offended, I was like, she was half-baked as a result. Did he pay it? Yeah, no, he didn't pay it. Kevin Smith loves dogs, so he can't be all bad. Isn't that what they said about Hitler? I don't know if that's the best one. Chesterfields and Pall Malls, Jesus Christ. He should have sent you to college with that $7,000. Yeah, my dad, it's always been kind of a running thing with me and my dad, is that, because I wanted to study the arts, that wasn't a valuable aspect, expenditure of money for college. Happy Sunday, just getting here. Sorry, late. Got the patch, very cool. Oh, nice, Jamie. That's great. It's like your dad's impact takes nothing from your mother. His presence or absence is significant. This is true. My favorite memories of my dad was going to ball games and fishing. Yeah. Hitler killed his dog Blondie with cyanide, lest we forget. This is true. He was only his dogs. He loved his dogs as a valuable additive to himself. Hal, first commission check I get out of real estate, I'll make a super chat for it. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, just just the first $1. That's it, right? It's the $1. I agree that architecture is part of the arts as well. Hi, Julie. You didn't forget. It's just good to have you here, but thank you so much. That's really awesome. Yeah, you guys are great. It's funny because during the in-between shooting in China and the next one, basically super chat and all that stuff is the only money I have coming in because I'm not working because I'm just got Camden this whole time. So I'm doing one, maybe 2 shows, but they're all just minor, more appearances, working on material than doing any shows. So every little bit helps. Thank you guys. It's awesome. Depends on who the guest is seeing you. Really, it's my opinion. If this guest is more lefty, you might like those episodes. Rogan alternates between acceptable and not. Yeah, we all do. I disagree with him on a bunch of stuff. And that's it's an interesting thing. Because obviously. Oh, thank you, Julie. Jordan Peterson's made a lot of noise lately, and obviously he's getting a lot of attention. And I don't disagree with him on some base points. I just think he's a dick is his problem. That's his problem. He's a bad shepherd of some good ideas, and there's a lot of that going around. There's a lot of people who have reasonable points worth making, but they can't check their own emotions or their own attitudes enough to not be a dick. And that comes up more so with Rogan's guests than he is, because I think he's a genuinely nice guy. As a matter of fact, I think Rogan, more than almost anybody that he has on, is a total cream puff. He's a sweetheart. And he's very emotionally easy to affect. Because he's a classic bluster bomb. He's he's bulky and built like a bulldog. Just super muscular, but I think it belies a sensitivity underneath that's easily affected. And if you watch how he talks about most stuff, baked moments aside, I think he's he's got a very childlike nature. Thank you, Jamie. That's awesome. Does everyone want to be Howard Stern? No, I don't think so. Jordan PC is one of the conned. I don't know what that means. Too bad he's not good UFC commentator. He's too biased. I don't know. He makes his living doing it, and commentators are just that way. You can agree with them or don't agree with them, and so that's why they have multiple people on the panel. And anybody who gets too much into it is too biased. And besides, you're a big wrestling fan, so I don't know how I can take you seriously about Ultimate Fighting. They're absolutely at odds with each other. I want to be Rush Limbaugh, but for good and not evil. We'll absolutely do it, Ellie. We support you 100%. Yeah. I want to ask you, Hal, do I annoy you on Twitter? I tweet you so much and fangirl so hard. No, you do not. It's totally fine. Peterson is a conservative authoritarian. Those people are the Trump base. I disagree. I don't think he's an authoritarian. I would argue that he's not even conservative in those moments. I think he has his own personal prejudices that upset him, but I don't know. And he's certainly closer to a true religious conservative or an old school conservative. Listened to Howard up until 2000, but not since Sirius. It's funny because I always thought that was odd when he moved, and then it became a big winning move for him. Ellie Warner, you want to be a young Turk? No, you don't. There's a huge difference between wrestling fan and MMA fan, Hal. I know. That's my point. My dad was an architect, Edgar White, FAIA, focused on saving, landmarking, and restoring. All best buds of Jack Kerouac, and even on the road is Tim Gray. We need more folks who want a landmark. I agree, Jamie. My dad, was a specialist in period architecture and helped rebuild the original Kentucky State Library, which is a wood building, by the way. I know because I helped make square nails with them because they were, you have to hand make them and hand press them, and so I did that as a project with my dad one summer. Made piles of square nails, he was actually hired on to one of his projects was the Bloomingdale's building in Chicago because it was a period building. So pro wrestling is fake, and I'm not in 8th grade anymore. Okay. tree nails, right? Trunnels. Joe Rogan is very differential to his guests. So if you're right guest, he'll shift him right. If he has more left guests, he'll shift that way. I think he does that to further the conversation. You know what I mean? Because if your only job is, and this is the problem that I have oftentimes when Peterson is interviewed, is that the interviewer seems less about interviewing Peterson as defining his interview before it happens, and that's why they always get into trouble and they kind of look stupid. And again, one of the worst things you can do if you have a genuine principle is give up that principle in going after your enemies, because then they can argue that you are not a person of principle. How your dad would have gotten along with mine, who passed away a year ago. Same big heart. I don't doubt it, Jamie. I completely agree. I learned WWF was just theater at a young age. Yeah. I worked for, and oh wow, Frank Lloyd Wright Home in Wisconsin, Architecture Preservation. So that's great. I don't know Jordan Peterson. He's a Canadian professor who got known because he pushed back against the Canadian law enforcing gender pronouns, like non-gender or gender neutral or gender specific pronouns being more inclusive. So his argument was that it was compelled speech, that this was the first time that the Canadian government had said you must use these regardless of your belief system. I have my own problem with that rule, and that is that I think enforced respect is a lie, and when you force people to live a lie, you actually create more resentment in the first place, and that's ultimately what that law did in a lot of fronts. And so instead of, and again, there's a difference between morality and a law, and if you try to enforce a morality based law, a lot of times all you do is create hypocrites. And when that happens, you create a lot of pushback. Now, if it's in a material sense, like letting black people go to certain colleges or whatever, I don't care how people feel about that. But when you're talking about language, there is a certain point where the government should take no action to enforce language on people, period, unless it, like yelling fire in a crowded theater. Everything else should be above board. The ramifications for that should be social, not legal. Because once you get into creating a legal precedent where the government can compel speech, then you permanently create that legal precedent, and therefore in the future the government can compel any kind of speech because of the legal precedent. So I don't believe in giving any ground, and I think that was his main push. I just think, like I said, he's kind of a dick. And so in being a dick, his pushback made him seem more bigoted than his point, and then attributed bigotry to that point instead of the other way around. So you can enforce civility on a professional level. Enforcing it on an interpersonal level is more problematic. Exclusive violent behavior, of course. Exactly. That's right. And again, if your goal is respect, if your goal is people to respect other human beings, you can't legally force that respect. You can enforce the material aspects, like I said, being able to use businesses, being able to go to schools, not excluding Jews from organizations and the like. And then I would say that the Canadian law about compelled speech, where you're saying, yes, we can make you use these certain words, is sort of, on a free speech level, the equivalent of allowing people to deny gay people, wedding cakes to some degree. If you give ground in that, you also go, well, for religious reasons, I don't believe Jews should be allowed on my golf course. Like that, it's a real easy legal jump from one to there. So you don't give that ground. You don't go, in the name of religious freedom, we let people deny people business on their, because they don't want to work based on their religious freedom. Well, now, where does that stop, right? And so the same thing applies in the inverse from a liberal, standpoint. On the linguistic side, you do not compel speech ever. Jordan Peterson puts a scholarly face on the anti-social justice backlash. I think they use him as cover. I think he actually genuinely believes what he's saying. I don't think it's a face. And I think and again, my problem with social justice warrior is, not to get too Carlin about it, but is the breakdowns of that point. First of all, there's no such thing as social justice. There's legal justice, and then there's social interaction. Whenever you try to create social justice, what you do is you water down what legitimate justice is. And then social justice warrior, if you're trying to create an egalitarian, peaceful society where everybody's allowed to be who they are, and then you use warrior as your phrase, you're just taking on the moniker of the enemy and using it and saying it has value, and so then you can't be surprised when violence comes from that. This is a guy who was saying if we had sex with men, they wouldn't be violent. What? That isn't the same guy who was saying if we had sex with men, they wouldn't be violent, is it? I don't think that's what he was saying, but I don't know the direct quote you're talking about. I'm just talking about where he got his start, whatever. But the point, and I'm talking about how he's interviewed. What he's saying, I'll leave that up to everybody's interpretation as to whether they think it has value or not. And if you want to know about it, go look. If you don't care, that's not the important thing. The important thing is how you address a person you have a political difference with or a philosophical difference with. And you have to be very careful in doing that you don't give them more ground than they deserve simply by overstepping your own point. And so he's rude, seeing you. He's just a rude guy who can appear to be more polite and civilized. He's Canadian. They are more polite and civilized. There's a flip side of being an identity politics fanatic, Hal, but there are very few of those people like Peterson who take the one outlier and say it's all liberals. Yeah, I don't think he does that. I think he actually makes the case that that left wing goes too far, and it's up to the left to police when people have gone too far with that thing. In the lecture that I saw, it was a debate actually. That's what he was talking about. Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of quote unquote identity politics either in that regard. I'm a big believer in humanity politics. But that's what makes me a radical centrist, and that's why people get irritated with me because they consider me a fake lefty or whatever, like I've been called or whatever. I'd rather be labeled a hippie than an SJW. All right, yeah, that's reasonable. Hippie's pretty good. All people named Jordan are a problem. Yeah, Jordan Peterson exaggerates very greatly the number of people on the left who go too far. I agree. I don't think the number is as big as he is. But again, he's a college professor, so he sees the college campus version, and that's probably why he reacts that way. It's like everybody thinks that their backyard is indicative of the rest of the world. If you have crabgrass, the world must be overrun with crabgrass. And again, that's why I believe in sort of universal travel. There's nothing fake about you, Hal. Well, thank you, Amos. I would argue that I curtail my beliefs and try to communicate them better, and so that definitely is me not speaking from my id, but that's the real me. The real me wouldn't go, I had an idea so I will just say it as it first occurred to me, and I see that happening a lot, and because people feel they are right or whatever. It's just, it's important to me to kind of measure it. And, that's what got Obama in trouble with a lot of people, is they always felt like he was equivocating. I'm like, he's not. He's trying to be careful. And careful means, literally full of care, actually caring about what the ramifications are of what you're saying and what you're doing, The big righty memes against general equality is virtue signaling and social justice warriors. I agree, but I also think that those things are handed to them sometimes by people who don't understand that they need to manage their message, because it is important. And I think ultimately that's where Obama had that moment where he's like, did we go too far or whatever. I think he's definitely considering that, and he's not necessarily wrong, because sometimes your idea is terrific. How you communicate it or how you present it might be terrible, and so you have to question. And I think it's always good to go, is my message getting my point across, or is my message eating my point? Is my principle being served by my messaging, those kind of things. Like, that's always a good idea to you know, if you want to be effective, anyways, if you want to actually benefit the world, right? And to me, that's important. So I will measure what I do, and it's also, it affects how I, what I say in my stand-up as well. Obviously, my stand-up, I have a very specific set of rules about what I joke about. I don't, like, for example, I don't joke about anything anybody can't change. And that's my primary rule. My idea about what people can change about themselves might be different than someone else's, but that's a principled stand that I take, and I'm willing to determine based on that, what the realm of jokes that I will make is, right? And I think it's, as long as you're operating, like, the constant running theme is that I've been able to joke about in my act all the things that supposedly get you kicked off of college campuses and you can't talk about in front of very liberal audiences who supposedly get upset about these things and are all snowflakey about them. And that hasn't been the case, because I think the principle of what I am saying is clear in what I'm talking about. And I think some people, I call them, like, bad shepherds of good ideas. People have, there can be people on the left and the right who have good ideas about what they want to do, but they're just terrible shepherds of them. They're the worst person to present those ideas, because they can't manage their emotions, they can't articulate themselves well, they don't manage their knowledge of facts. And so when they're confronted in a debate or in a circumstance, they fall apart in the face of it, or they're too deferential, or as Peterson would call it, they're high on the agreeableness scale, so they're too agreeable, therefore they won't, they vacillate between not fighting for their point to over-fighting, and there's a lot of that. I think the left in general, our problem has been, that we are too deferential up to the point of crisis, and then there's a panicked flailing. The fight back is a mess. It's unmanaged. And that's a shame. And it's what happens when you go into a battle without a strategy. And I think there's a value in sitting with yourself in the face of, and this is why, by the way, I don't ever get tired of going after Trump. I don't go, oh, God, it's getting me down. Or I don't actually, Ginger, that's absurd. So I don't know where that comes from, but that's a ridiculous notion. But again, if you're fighting against somebody like that, and it doesn't have to be him. I used him as an example, but it could be Ben Shapiro. It could be, Steven Crowder, who does that, there's gay marriage is wrong, it changed my mind. He does those kind of weird provocative BS sit-downs in front of organizations to try to provoke people. And it works, because what he does is he comes in with his kind of standardized attitude, and his whole point is he won't break emotionally. He'll just let you freak out, and he'll just keep poking with what he considers provocative things, not based on anything, and he'll use, like, decontextualized statistics to prove a point that isn't even played out. But he'll put that in there and just kind of sit there calmly and basically find somebody he can drive nuts, and then put that on his YouTube channel, and anybody who's kind of managed about it won't get the same attention. Same thing is true of, Dave Rubin's kind of just a right-wing farm. He just farms right-wingers. He doesn't really have anybody left-wing on his show to discuss these things. He plays the liberal, and and effectively, like, he has all these guys like, hey, I'm just having a conversation, which you're not. You're handing a bullhorn is what you're doing, without any real, discussion or pushback. And again, I don't think necessarily that an interviewer's job in almost any context is to push back against what the person is saying right out of the gate. Some of the most successful interviewers are people who kind of lay back and draw people out. And you can look at that as sort of the Lester Holt argument, is that Lester Holt doesn't have a political, bent on his interview. He'll do a little bit of what's kind of standardized pushing, but most of it's pretty like jovial. And if you look at it from a right wing or a left wing side, interviewing somebody like that, you should slam these people to the mat the second they walk out there. Who are you, you baby killing bastard? And there's absolutely a principled reason for doing that. But will you end up getting anything from them other than being able to high five yourself, right? And your goal has to be more than just being able to high five with your, people who already agree with you afterwards. If you can draw somebody out and make them, admit they're wrong about something, or crisscross their, change their attitude about something, which is, people have seen me do with people who have called in, like right-wingers who've called in on the show before. It takes a much more measured approach, right, to do that than to just go, this guy comes on here, I'm going to tell him what a pig he is. And you're like, well, fine. And then it'll shut down, and you'll pat yourself on the back, and then it'll be over. And that debate model is how the topic of race and IQ, which gets brought up about every 10, 15 years, gets you. Glad to see you back, by the way, Hal. Thank you, Blake Light Blues. Yeah, I mean, the race and IQ debate is just, it's junk science. It's just garbage. Period. And again, all of these things are things I'm willing to debate with anybody. But there's, I just have this little radio show on, on the weekends on this little station with our little group in here, and and so I don't have like the full-time YouTube. I've got a career, so I don't have a full-time career YouTuber thing to get caught up in that kind of nonsense, But again, it's this is one of these things where like I feel like I could debate anybody on almost anything. Skill-wise, I just only choose to do it on stuff that I'm principled about. You really want to interview to say as much as they can so the truth can come out. The worst thing to do is ask yes or no questions. Yeah, well, you want to draw them out. I mean, you're fishing ultimately, right? I think that's why Karl Rove people have avoided you. Yeah, they're definitely not paying me. Did I debate at New Trier? Only with the dean of students about whether or not I should be expelled. No, I wasn't on the debate team. That was such a rich kid thing. Like, coming from Kentucky and moving to Chicago and going to that school, it was very odd to, like, that they had a lacrosse team and a debate group and all that kind of stuff. And, the idea that you would have joined the debate team. Like, basically, I mean, arguably, that's what my stand-up is. It's just a one-sided debate. I just don't give a shit about the other side because I've thought about it already, so I don't need somebody up there to say it to me. Glad to do it. But that being said, I've read books on debate. I've read books on language and manipulation. I've read books that I specifically disagree with. I had a girlfriend who was a huge Ayn Rand fan, so I read The Fountainhead. I read Atlas Shrugged. I read, was it The Virtue of Selfishness? Is that what it is? And I understood the appeal of parts of it, and then I understand the poison of the rest of it. And I also looked at a lot of it written in the context of somebody who was alive and escaped communism and went to the United States and was hostile to it and wrote this kind of, middle finger over her back shoulder about it. And then of course read it in the context that she was on Social Security when she died and would have died in poverty without it, and her boyfriend, she either pretended he was her husband or a relative or something to get him on Social Security too. So stand-up is a rhetorical act. I started in the debate team, but it was too much conflict for me. I disagree. I don't believe you. Please, a citation needed. So Yeah, so I mean, it's important. Rand offered a great way for people to legitimize their selfishness. Yeah, this is true. I mean, Carl, I would argue that there are some people who are deferential to a fault, that they have been raised in such a way that they sideline and their own needs and create secondary needs. So much so that they need an overcorrection to do it. And so sometimes reading something like Ayn Rand can kind of jumpstart their own sense of self-worth. And I see that happening a lot. And I think that's what, early college readers of Ayn Rand who read it and they kind of have their eyes opened to it find. And then eventually the more egregious, grotesque parts of it wear off. Some people don't. They obviously, connect to it. But in terms of the value of owning your own space, being being self-reliant, owning, there's a book my cousin recommended to me. It was written by a Marine, and it's got a very Marine kind of a name to it. Where is it? Is it in? Oh, I didn't download it on this one. Let's see. All books. There we go. I'll find it in here. Where are you? Don't hide my iCloud books. It's called Radical. Where is it? Oh, Extreme Ownership. Yeah. So Extreme Ownership is written by a Navy SEAL, and the whole thing is about everything that's wrong with your life is your fault. Always. It's this Navy SEAL attitude about take 100% responsibility for yourself all the time, no matter what. It is your fault, and that's a lot to take on. But it's it's a decent message, because with it, it has to come the ability to change it, right, and to do something about it. If you believe that, but then you believe there's nothing you can do about it, that's just a recipe for paralysis, right? And so there's something really valuable about owning, of ownership of your life, right? And I think that's like, it can be important, right? And Ayn Rand is some people's way through that. I mean, if you listen to literally like some of the early Rush albums were inspired by Ayn Rand, was the beginning of Neil Peart reading Ayn Rand and writing it into lyrics and all kinds of stuff, Let's see. I remember a former coworker who was a Democrat but liked Ayn Rand. I didn't understand. Maybe it was about self-esteem, confidence in the male-dominated profession. Well, I think here, this is one of the big issues, I think, with Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck has the same message, I think. A little bit, although I think it's like not caring what other people think is very healthy. Not caring about the ramifications of what you're doing is actually terrible. And it's a recipe for disaster. That being said, I think there's a lot of people who take what is a personal system for emotional and psychological management and they turn it into a political thing. I think Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules or whatever, what's his book called? I have to look it up. 12 Steps or whatever for life, is more akin to a regular self-help book, right? And I've, you guys know me. I've read all of Tony Robbins' stuff. I love in the Robbins world, Mel Robbins' book, the 5-second rule. I mean, I can literally scroll through, my, books in here. Like Og Mandino's University of Success is a book I highly recommend. And you're not, you can read it once and then read it the second time and you're a different human being, right? And Ginger, I think you're right. That is a tightrope. It is a tough one because once you take on that, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of weight, to say that I'm 100% responsible for how I ended up. And not a lot of people are comfortable with that idea. And I think there's an appeal to that way of thinking in what Ayn Rand is talking about. The problem is when you try to attribute it to governmental stuff, and her stuff is absolutely meant to be governmental as opposed to personal. If her books were all about, like, essentially a sort of give unto Caesar's attitude towards, look, I live in this country, this is free will, I've got taxes I have to pay, and I've got this circumstance, we have social programs to make sure people don't fall through the cracks, because that's part of what makes the country great. But as it goes for me, I will never take a dime from the government, and here's why, and da-da-da. There's an argument you can make for that, or whatever, especially if you're not a hypocrite and you actually live up to it, right? The problem is when they try, that's what libertarians are. Libertarians are effectively people who are trying to take sort of a Tony Robbins approach and externalize it, make it less about themselves and how the government should work, right? And instead of being 100% self-reliant, they're going, you should be 100% self-reliant. Whatever is, I don't know what's happened. I don't care what's happened to you. So there you go. We live in a culture where successful people are self-made, but if they fail, it's someone else's fault. Yeah, I would argue that that's an agreed to thought. My sister was a fan of Rand. She's a right-winger and a lesbian. There's a lot of women who are fans of Ayn Rand. Sam Harris, careful intellectual who sometimes sounds lefty, gives a nod to bell curve. Rachel, I guess. Sam Harris is a fool. I'm not a fan of Sam Harris. And again, when I was saying there are people who are bad shepherds of good ideas, he's got a lot of bad ideas too. And I think, I've said this, like, discussing philosophy or religion or any of that stuff with Sam Harris is like discussing fellatio with a praying mantis. Like, that he's a tin man in the worst sense, so I don't expect any kind of, again, don't go to a dry well looking for a drink of water, and that's what Sam Harris is, in my opinion. But again, you can read and absorb anything, right? And kind of find good in all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so that was that's my rant on that part of it. Immigrants took their job, the government takes their tax money, they have all kinds of reasons why they're not making it. Absolutely. And again, these are the people who supposedly are the self-reliant ones. This is part and parcel of the whole, like, I believe in, the government isn't any good, that's why I'm running for office, right? Yeah, to prove it, right? Because you get all the credit but deflect all the blame, you have less empathy for people who, for whatever reason, aren't able to stand on their own 2 feet and project victimhood, right? Because you don't recognize that you're actually you're using victimhood in your own way, It's like I don't believe in identity politics because I'm white. You're like, isn't that an identity? What kind of white person are you? Just generic white. Oh, I see. So you don't know anything about your race. You don't know anything about your history. You don't know where your family line came from. You don't know the struggles of, what kind of white person you are, or what, or whether your, relatives were, a group of dominant whites who were harmful to, the fiefdom of Eastern European whites or whatever, like, that kind of crowd. Like, billionaires do have it hard. It's very rough, Amos, and I'm glad that you have an empathy for them, of all people. I think it's very big of you. I do. My main complaint, sexist, is that the end of the chapter house and the epilogue scene. Okay, you're talking about Dune. Ready? Nerd alert. Bye, Jamie White. Be well. Yeah. Yeah, I got to get going too. Oh, yeah, we've gone well past this one. This is a long one. Thank you guys for sticking around. Yeah, I heard someone say they support Trump because they're proud of being white, and I'm like, what are you proud of? That was luck of the draw, not an acknowledgement. You can be proud of your heritage, but the weird thing is, and Ginger, I'm sure you've seen some of this too. Maybe some of you, like, I travel a lot. When you go through the South, you're like, the people with the white pride, like flags and that kind of stuff, have the most garbage in their yard. You know what I mean? Like, your house is a mess. You are a wreck. You know, it's the, you know, and again, it's the, like, horrible physical shape, bad English, hygiene issues, cars rotten, and then, you know, and yet white pride. Like, how are you showing said pride? I'm not seeing any of it. I think even anyone can even be proud of their heritage because they have nothing to do with that. Their heritage is accomplished. You can be proud of where your parents came from. You know, you can honor your parents and your grandparents and that kind of stuff. And I do think there is something to, you know, to heritage. That's okay. You know, it's just that, yeah, oh, this guy's a hoarder. Right. I just think it's like super, you know, if you're gonna go white pride, and like, you better be a damn fine example. And the other thing is, like, what are you, German? Are you English? Are you Irish? Are you Scottish? Are you Scandinavian? Are you Italian? Are you Turkish? Are you Spanish? You know, like, what kind of white are we talking about? And why are you, you know, are you proud because generic white? Well, I don't know what the hell that is. Or are you proud because, you know, your great-great-grandfather, you know, was, or your great-great-grandmother, for that matter, was an Irish indentured servant who, you know, escaped indentured servitude to their, you know, English lord, and ultimately, hi Vadim, you gotta type in English, dude. So, you know, there's a in Spanish, there's a reason why Trump is waiting for this guy to die to stop being a drain on the government. He's proudest for him. I just don't get it. Ginger Boy is one of my favorite hypotheses that Tom Hartman posts is that billionaires are also hoarders. They just don't hoard junk. They hoard money. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Spanish, those are the reason Trumpists want to build a wall. No, Mexicans are why they want to build a wall. Spanish is the language. White pride unless you're a Jew or gay or liberal, right? That's right. I have liberal heritage too, and I'm proud of my parents for that. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going, yeah, you know, I'm interested, and we were all just talking about our DNA before. You can be proud of where you came from. You can be proud of your family line. You can be proud of them wherever they are. Just be aware of what you're proud of. Like, just your generic color seems a bit weird, unless it's been degraded in some abstract. And then, of course, you know, there's a reason to for people of color, especially in this country, to stand by each other, because of over time they're kind of, you know, being grouped together, lumped in there. But I also even think that in that case, it behooves everybody to know as much about their heritage background as well, as much as they can. And that's one of the problems with when people you know, were forcibly brought over, is that they lost track of that, right? You know, as much as you can find out about it, there's, you know, it helps shore up your argument for your pride in yourself, that kind of thing. Let's see. How about interviews? You can also do an interview with Jack O'Connell and George Clooney did on Money Monster to get an answer, which was he lied. I'm not sure what that was in relation to, but okay. Yeah, I had a beautiful young female server at a Mexican restaurant in Dallas. We ordered Negro Modelo and Topo Chico, and she said, "Where are you from with those funny words? I'm white." What? That's really weird. The only reason they don't want people to speak Spanish is because they don't understand it and are too lazy to learn another language to figure it out. I do think they feel like they're being invaded, and that's why they don't, you know, that's that dude freaking out, you know, in New York, and then that dude arresting people for speaking Spanish near the Canadian border. Like, those people, where do you think they snuck from? I speak Spanish and I'm white. My husband speaks English and he's Hispanic. Yeah, Spanish is an Indo-European language, though. It's not the native language of Mexico. You know, and it's as, you know, Spanish is, you know, the equivalent, Spanish spoken in Mexico and then in southern part of the United States is the equivalent of Quebecois French being spoken in Canada, really. That's an unpopular opinion. That's one of my unpopular opinions, in case you know. They invaded first, and then they invaded and changed the laws to English to steal land and property. What they fear is karma. Well, I mean, you can argue that that Spanish becoming the language was the effect of Spanish, invading South America. That Spanish is not a natural language to the continent at all either, any more than English or French. So it really we're talking colonial languages all the way across. Skin cancer is my greatest fear. Oh, well, it's a concern. Just make sure you're taking enough vitamin D, because if you're not getting any sun, you're not producing enough. So, and your body produces vitamin D to fight off cancer. There you go. Don't get burned. All right. See you guys next Saturday. I'm going to help my producer meet his deadline. I think that's wise. I got to sign off too. It's 1:00. You guys are awesome. Thanks for sticking around, at least having the conversation. You're wonderful. And we will see you next time. I insist. So there you go. Hold on. I'm going to put a post-show link on this. Public upload. There you go. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for everybody who came late too. And Ginger, be well. You guys are awesome, and I will see you. I'll probably see you before next week, though. I'm gonna do a few more because I'm home for the summer. I'm gonna do more of these. So, yeah. So we'll do. I'll try and give you some warning, but most of the time I'll just hop on. So, all right, guys. Thanks so much. Bye.